I'm Alice. I've had my share of rough patches, but who hasn't, right? My dad was my rock, my everything. Ever since Mom passed away when I was just a little thing, it's been the two of us against the world. He always stressed the importance of education, scraping together every dime he could to fund my college dreams. "You're gonna make it, kiddo," he'd assure me with a wink, even as he dropped another handful of coins into our battered college fund jar. I believed him. More than that, I believed in us. After high school, I started at the local community college, aiming to make a name for myself in investment management. It was there I met Tom. He was part of my cohort, charming in a scruffy, just rolled out of bed way that somehow worked wonders on me. We clicked instantly, stealing glances during lectures and sharing jokes over lukewarm cafeteria coffee. Then the ground beneath me crumbled. Dad passed away unexpectedly. No warning, just gone. And like a house of cards in a breeze, our financial security fluttered away too. Turned out, the college fund was more hope than reality. With Dad gone, not only was I missing him and his guidance, but I also faced the stark truth that my college days were numbered. I managed to scrape through my first year on remnants and resilience, but had to drop out as the money dried up. Dad had left me the apartment, a small 3-bedroom in a worn-down part of town. It wasn't much, but it was home. Tom first came over to the apartment on a chilly evening, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his faded jeans. "You live here alone, Alice?" he asked, scanning the room where the wallpaper peeled gently at the corners. "Yeah, just me now," I replied, trying to smooth down a particularly rebellious strip of wallpaper. "It's not much, but it's what I've got." He watched me for a moment, then stepped closer, taking my hands in his. "Let's get married, Alice. I want to take care of you. Let's start our life right here." It was sudden, sure, but nothing in my life had ever been planned out, so why start now? "Okay, Tom," I said, and it felt right. We didn't wait long. The wedding was as modest as they come, held at the city hall, with a couple of friends as witnesses. Tom's parents didn't show, they'd never really approved of me. "Too plain," they'd whispered, thinking I couldn't hear. "Not one of us." It stung, but Tom squeezed my hand and whispered back, "I love you. That's all that matters." After the ceremony, we walked back to now our apartment, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows on the sidewalk. Tom cracked open a bottle of the cheapest champagne the corner store had to offer and poured us each a trembling glass of bubbly liquid. "To us," he toasted, lifting his glass. "To us," I echoed, the champagne fizzing on my tongue, tasting like hope and new beginnings. ####Chapter 2, Promises Made. Tom and I had an agreement, he'd hit the books while I paid the bills. Once he was done with college, it would be my turn to chase the degree I'd left hanging when life got too heavy. Simple, right? I thought so too, but nothing's ever that straightforward. I worked 2 jobs. By day, I was a cashier at a grocery store, dealing with endless lines and the occasional irate shopper. By night, I switched aprons for a waitress gig at a local diner, serving up greasy burgers and lukewarm coffee to truck drivers and late-night drifters. It was grueling, but I pushed through, fueled by the thought of someday walking back through those college doors. Tom, meanwhile, was knee-deep in his studies, or so he said. But his demands grew with them. "Alice, when's dinner? I can't eat this fast food crap anymore," he'd complain as soon as I dragged my exhausted body through the door. "I need something decent, like Mom used to make." I'd bite back fatigue-laced anger, tossing my keys on the table. "Maybe learn to cook it yourself, Tom." "I'm not your mom." He'd scowl, his face closing off. "I'm studying to make something of myself. Least you could do is keep the house decent." His words would slice through the weariness, sparking a fire in my chest. Yet, I'd swallow the retort, fearing the crack it could cause in our already fragile agreement. Tom's parents were no help. They were educated, polished, a stark contrast to my high school diploma and diner-stained uniform. They barely acknowledged me, and on the rare occasions they did, it was to offer a backhanded compliment or a thinly veiled critique. "You would understand this if you had finished your education, dear," Tom's mother would say, sipping her perfectly brewed tea as she glanced over the top of her glasses. Tom didn't defend me. He just nodded along, soaking up their words like gospel. More and more, he'd spend nights there, escaping our cramped apartment and the responsibilities it housed. One evening, as I scrubbed the diner's grease from under my nails, Tom dropped another bomb. "I'm staying at my parents' tonight. Need a real study environment, and a good night's sleep." I slammed the bathroom cabinet a little harder than necessary. "Fine. Do what you gotta do." The words were sharp, stung with all the things I couldn't say. As the days bled into months, I found solace in my routines, the repetitive tasks of my jobs allowing me to zone out the mounting frustrations at home. I was a robot, moving through the motions, scan items, smile, serve food, clean up. Rinse and repeat. One particularly long night, I came home to an empty apartment, no Tom, no apologies, just a note. "Gone to study. Make sure dinner's ready tomorrow." I crumpled the note, the paper cutting into my palm. Alone in the dim light of our kitchen, I allowed myself a moment to really feel it all, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the simmering anger. I leaned against the counter, eyes closed, a silent tear escaping despite my best efforts. After years of grinding through 2 jobs and watching Tom bury himself in his books, the day finally came when he graduated. Tom landed a job almost immediately at a prestigious company, and the news brought a breath of fresh air into our strained lives. His new job came with a paycheck that felt like a lottery win compared to my nightly tips at the diner. I remember sitting across from him at our small kitchen table one evening, the excitement bubbling up inside me. "So, with your new job, I was thinking it might be time for me to cut back at work and start looking at programs. You know, to pick up where I left off," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, laden with hopes and dreams long deferred. Tom didn't look up from his plate. "Alice, we can't afford that. Every penny has to be accounted for, and with the way things are, you know how tight the budget is." His fork clattered against the plate, a harsh sound that matched his words. I leaned back, my heart sinking, but not yet defeated. I could keep one job, maybe just the day shifts. We'd still have a steady income, and I could manage night classes. He shook his head, his voice firm, dismissive. "Just forget about college, Alice. We need stability, not more debts. It's not practical." The conversation ended there, but the argument continued in my head for days. Before I could press the issue further, I found out I was pregnant. Our daughter, Lily, became my new priority, and college faded into the background, a dream dissolved. Raising Lily was a joy, but it was also another chain tying me to routines and responsibilities I hadn't chosen alone. I continued working at the grocery store, my dreams shelved like the products I stocked. Tom's criticisms didn't stop with my shelved education, they seeped into my parenting. "You're not doing it right, Alice. She needs to learn proper manners, not whatever it is you're trying to teach her," Tom would say, barely looking up from his phone. I remember holding Lily close, whispering promises to her that I'd begun to doubt I could keep. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." As Lily grew, Tom's parents became more involved, their influence overshadowing mine. They paid for a fancy preschool, and every school event was an exhibition of their grandparental pride. One evening, Tom coldly explained a new rule. "Alice, it's best if you don't come to the school events. The teachers, they have a certain expectation of family. We can't ruin Lily's opportunities." I felt the sting of those words, a slap dressed up as paternal concern. So, what am I supposed to do? Just stay home and pretend I don't have a daughter who's growing up, learning things I'm not teaching her, becoming someone I barely know? "It's for the best," was all he said, his indifference the final nail in the coffin of our once shared dreams. The years twisted along, and Tom's words had weight, not the kind that anchors you in safety, but the kind that pulls you under. His sharp commands to our daughter, Lily, left marks, teaching her the lessons of disrespect and disdain toward me, her mother. "Alice, don't bother telling her what to do. She listens to me, not you. It's for her own good. Tom snapped one evening when I suggested Lily might set the table. In front of Lily, his words were always like this. I watched, heart sinking, as my little girl's eyes hardened to match her father's. You don't know anything, Mom, Lily would toss at me when I asked for help around the house. Her tone mimicked her father's, each word a barb. I tried to reach her, to bridge the widening gap with mother-daughter chats, but she only pulled further away, retreating to a world where I couldn't follow, a world painted by Tom and his parents. One humiliating afternoon brought everything painfully into focus. Lily had friends over, laughter and light voices echoing down the hallway of our home. I was cleaning when I bumped into them in the hall. Lily froze, her eyes darting between me and her friends. I smiled, wiping my hands on my apron, about to say hello. But before the words could form, Lily cut in. Oh, this is just our housekeeper. Her friends nodded, barely giving me a second glance as they shuffled past into Lily's immaculately kept room, off limits to the likes of me. The door clicked shut, and the muffled bursts of teenage giggles were like needles to my chest. I retreated to the kitchen, sinking against the fridge as tears betrayed my resolve not to let this break me. I was her mother, not some dismissed servant in my own home. That evening, I confronted Tom, my voice shaking but firm. How can you let her, our daughter, treat me like this? Today she called me the housekeeper, Tom. In our home. Tom didn't look up from his paper. Maybe if you didn't look the part, she'd respect you more. You're always cleaning, always in those rags. What do you expect? His words stung, slicing through whatever defenses I had left. I'm trying, Tom. I'm trying to make this a home. But you and your parents, you're teaching her to hate me. He scoffed, folding his newspaper with precision. Alice, you need to stop being so sensitive. She's growing up in a different world than you did. She needs to fit in. Nights turned restless, my thoughts spiraling. Tom's distancing, the casual cruelty of his parents, and now Lily's rejection painted a stark picture. I was an outsider in my own life, my role diminished to that of a silent provider, unseen and unappreciated. As I watched Lily grow into a teenager, her embarrassment of me became more pronounced. Her comments about my outdated clothes, my simple manners, cut deeper because they echoed Tom's words. She was ashamed to be seen with me, her mother, who had sacrificed everything only to be rendered invisible. Turning 37 wasn't supposed to be a milestone, but I had hoped it would be a turning point for something better, something kinder. With a heart full of tentative hope, I booked a table at a nice restaurant downtown, a small celebration, just me, Tom, and Lily. Nothing fancy, but something to maybe, just maybe, bring us back together for a night. I got home from work, my spirits buoyed by the thought of a quiet dinner with my family. The apartment was quiet when I walked in, too quiet. Tom and Lily were sitting in the living room, their faces turned towards the TV, looking like they were braced for bad news. Hey, I've got a surprise. I booked us a table at Marcello's for dinner, to celebrate my birthday. Just the three of us, I said, my voice bright, forcing cheerfulness into the edges of my exhaustion. Tom turned off the TV and looked at me, an eyebrow raised, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Alice, seriously? You think we want to go out and celebrate with you? A dropout? What would we even talk about? Tom's words were casual, but they cut deep, his smirk turning into a sneer. Yeah, Mom, it's kinda embarrassing. You wouldn't even know which fork to use, Lily added, her words echoing her father's disdain. I felt my face flush, the sting of their words like a slap. I just thought, we could be a family, for tonight. Tom laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. A family? With you making a fool of yourself? No thanks. Actually, here's my gift to you. He stood up, walked over to his briefcase, and pulled out an envelope, tossing it onto the coffee table with a dramatic flourish. Confused, I picked it up, my hands trembling. It was a divorce application. This is your gift? Yeah, consider yourself free from us. We're done, Alice. I'm taking Lily, and we're moving out. You can keep this place. he said, his words cold, calculated. Lily just nodded, standing up to join her father. I'd rather live with Dad. I can't be seen with you, Mom. It's just too embarrassing. They packed up their things with chilling efficiency. I watched, frozen, as my world was dismantled piece by piece. Not just the physical pieces of our lives, but the last vestiges of any affection, any pretense of a relationship. They left without a goodbye, the door closing with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the empty apartment. The divorce proceedings were quick, clinical, and brutal. Tom's parents testified about my inadequacies, painting me as an uneducated, unfit mother in stark, unforgiving strokes. Even Lily spoke, her voice steady, her words rehearsed. I want to live with my dad. He's better for me. Sitting there, in that sterile courtroom, listening to the litany of my supposed failures, I felt something inside me break, or maybe, it was something coming together, a realization hardening into resolve. They were all strangers, their words no longer capable of wounding me as they once had. I was alone, truly alone, but perhaps that was the freedom I needed. I knew one thing for sure, I needed to prove, if to no one else but myself, that I was capable of much more. That burning resolve led me back to the doors of the college I had left years ago. I enrolled again, older than most of my classmates, and with a fierceness in me that only life's hard knocks can bestow. I hired tutors, spending evenings grappling with investment theories and financial models, my eyes bleary from the strain. Social media was a minefield, though. Every so often, a photo of Tom, Lily, and that woman, Tom's new partner, would pop up. They looked happy, carefree, living it up in some swanky downtown apartment that screamed luxury. The sting of seeing them so blissful, while I was over here piecing myself back together, was a sharp one. But instead of letting it drag me down, I used it as fuel. Each picture, each post, pushed me harder. I channeled my anger, my hurt, into my studies, turning bitterness into a motivator. Graduation day came, and I was a different woman from the one who had started. You've got what it takes, Alice. Don't let anyone tell you differently. My favorite professor, Dr. Henson, told me during our final meeting. His words were a balm to the raw edges of my pride. With his recommendation, I landed a position at a respected firm, stepping into the world of finance with a determination to rise. The corporate world was another battlefield, but one I was now well equipped to navigate. I started as just another employee, but not for long. Within 3 years, I climbed from the ground floor to the department head, my name on an office door, my decisions shaping the company's future. Alongside my career, I revamped my life. I traded my old, battered car for something sleek and new, something that hummed under my touch like a promise. My apartment followed, from modest to modern, a high-rise with views of the city that twinkled like the stars I was reaching for. Shopping for new clothes wasn't just about style, it was about armor. Each piece, whether a sharp suit or a sleek dress, was chosen to project the new me, the confident, capable businesswoman. My hair, once always pulled back in a practical ponytail, now fell in stylish waves or was pinned up in chic designs that said I cared about every detail. Only my closest friends knew the extent of my transformation. You're doing what you were meant to do, Alice. It's like you've finally found your stage, my friend Jenna told me over coffee one day, her eyes wide as she took in the changes. Yeah, I guess I have, I admitted, sipping my espresso. Tom and Lily, and all the pain associated with them, faded into the background, becoming just a part of my story, not the defining chapter. There I was, browsing job listings late one night, when I stumbled across an opening that made my heart skip a beat. A department head position at none other than the company where my ex-husband, Tom, worked. I applied, half out of a deep-seated need to prove myself, half out of the sheer audacity of it all. The interview was the next week. I walked in there with all the confidence of a woman who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The interviewers were a panel of 3, each more impressed than the last as we discussed everything from market trends to financial strategies. By the end, they seemed genuinely excited about what I could bring to the table. Well, Alice, I must say, it's refreshing to see such a clear vision and detailed knowledge. "We'd be lucky to have you on board," the senior interviewer remarked, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Thank you. I'm ready to hit the ground running," I replied, my tone steady, my resolve firmer than ever. My first day was something out of a movie. As I was introduced to my new team, the room was filled with polite applause and welcoming smiles. That was until Tom's face came into view. The shock on his face could have powered the city for hours. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly agape. The head of the company, Mr. Reynolds, seemed amused by the situation. He clapped a hand on my shoulder and announced, "Everyone, I expect you'll give Alice all the support she needs. She comes highly recommended, and I believe she will lead this department to new heights." Tom's reaction was less than gracious. As the room cleared, he stormed up to Mr. Reynolds, his voice low but harsh. "I applied for this position. Why was it given to her? What does she have that I don't?" Mr. Reynolds looked at Tom, then at me, an eyebrow raised. "Tom, the decision was based purely on merit. Alice's qualifications and vision for the department far exceed what you've shown us so far. There's a lot you could learn from her." "Learn from her? This is some kind of joke, right?" Tom scoffed, his voice rising. "No joke, Tom. I suggest you adjust your attitude and focus on your own responsibilities," Mr. Reynolds replied coolly. Humiliated, Tom did something I never expected. He threw his ID badge down on the table, muttered something about a stupid boss, and stormed out. Mr. Reynolds sighed, shaking his head as he watched Tom leave. "Sorry about that, Alice. I'll handle it from here. Why don't you get started with your team?" I nodded, a small, satisfied smile playing on my lips as I watched Tom disappear down the hallway. The sound of his furious footsteps was like music to my ears. Later, I overheard Mr. Reynolds on the phone. "Yes, he resigned. No, I can't give him a positive recommendation, not after this." The rest of the day was a blur of introductions and planning sessions, but through it all, one thought remained clear in my mind: justice, in its own twisted way, had been served. Tom had underestimated me, just like he always did, but this time I had come out on top. After Tom stormed out of the office that day, his career spiraled downward faster than I could have imagined. Rumors reached me through mutual acquaintances, ones who couldn't wait to spill the beans that Tom's latest mistress had kicked him and Lily out of her plush apartment. Desperate, they had no choice but to move back in with Tom's parents. I couldn't help but think how the mighty had fallen. It was during this tumultuous time that Lily, now a college student and every bit as demanding as she had been taught to be, showed up at my door. She let out a low whistle. "Wow, Mom, you really upgraded, huh? Guess dumping Dad worked out for you." Her tone was light, but there was an edge to it that put me on guard. "Lily, what brings you here?" She sauntered in, making herself comfortable on my plush sofa as if she owned the place. "Well, things are a bit tight at Grandpa's, and I thought, you know, you're rich, well-dressed, and educated now, maybe I could move in here. But I'd need a decent allowance, obviously." I looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw Tom's influence woven deeply into her demeanor. It pained me, but the clarity it brought was undeniable. "Lily, I think you should leave. I'm not going to be used like this, not by you, not by anyone." Her face crumpled into tears, but they didn't move me like they used to. When her tears failed to sway me, her temper flared. "You're just selfish. Just like you always were," she shouted as she stormed out, her parting words a sting in the calm of my apartment. News trickled back to me over the following weeks. Tom had started drinking, unable to cope with his bruised ego, and Lily moved to another city, perhaps to chase the independence she so desperately craved. As for me, life settled into a rhythm of success and new beginnings. I met Michael, a colleague whose kindness and quiet strength were the antitheses of Tom's bluster and cruelty. Over time, our friendship deepened into love, and we married in a small, joyful ceremony, surrounded by those who truly wished us well. Reflecting on the tumultuous journey, I realized I had come out stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I had lost a family only to find myself, and in doing so, gained a chance at a love and life that was genuine and fulfilling. Looking ahead, I felt ready for whatever came next, secure in the knowledge that I had not only survived but thrived, crafting a narrative of triumph that was entirely my own. I was just 6 when Mom passed away. My memories of her are like whispers, soft and fleeting. I remember her gentle touch and her warm smile. They said she was the kindest soul. But after she was gone, the warmth in our house faded like the last light of dusk. Dad didn't take long to fill the void she left. Enter Helen, my stepmother, with her sharp eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. She was like a winter chill, creeping into every corner of our lives. To Dad, she was sweetness personified, always the doting wife. But the moment we were alone, her mask would drop. "Listen here, Emily," she'd hiss, her voice slicing through the silence. "Don't think for a second that you're anything more than a burden. Your father might not see it, but I do. You're just excess baggage, a reminder of a past best forgotten." Her words stung, but I learned to keep my tears hidden. I couldn't let her see how deep her words cut. A year flew by, and the family dynamic shifted even more. Helen gave birth to Lily, and overnight, I became invisible. Dad, caught up in the joy of a new daughter, unwittingly handed the reins of my life over to Helen. It was like handing a fox the keys to the henhouse. She relished in making my life a living nightmare. Dad was hardly around, always buried in work or too tired to notice the tension. On the rare occasions he was present, Helen played the part of the perfect wife and mother, and I was just the ghost in the background. So, I learned to live in the shadows, my voice a mere echo in the vast emptiness of what used to be a home. Helen's reign was undisputed, her words the final say in a house that had once known the gentle guidance of my mother. And as the days turned to years, I found myself wondering if the warmth of a family was just a distant dream, forever out of reach in the cold reality I existed in. Living with Helen was like walking through a minefield, never knowing when the next explosion would occur. Meal times were a particular kind of torture. She knew exactly which dishes made my stomach turn, yet those were the ones she'd serve me, her eyes glinting with malice as she'd set the plate down. "Here, Emily, your dinner. Eat up, we can't have you wasting away," she'd say, a twisted smile on her lips as she served me the very things she knew I despised. I'd sit there, the smell alone enough to make me nauseous. The few times I mustered the courage to push the plate away, Helen's theatrics would come into play. "John, look at her. Your daughter is turning into a princess, too good for the food I slaved over. What are we going to do with her?" she'd wail to my father, painting herself as the victim. Dad, ever the peacemaker, would sigh. "Emily, can't you just eat what's given to you? Your stepmother works hard to prepare these meals." But it wasn't just the food. Helen's cruelty extended to how I was presented to the world. My clothes were either a hodgepodge of mismatched colors and patterns or hand-me-downs so worn they were threadbare. I'd step out looking more like a scarecrow or a parrot, drawing snickers and sideways glances from my peers. "Emily, why do you dress like that? You look weird," the kids at school would jeer. I'd swallow the lump in my throat, my cheeks burning with shame. "It's all I have," I'd mumble, wishing I could just disappear. Back at home, Lily lived a starkly different life. She was the golden child, the center of Helen and Dad's world. Her wardrobe was a collection of the prettiest dresses, her meals always her favorites. She grew up with the world at her feet, and it showed in her attitude. Spoiled and petulant, she'd throw tantrums if things didn't go her way, and Helen would rush to soothe her, blaming me for her outbursts. "Emily, look what you did. You upset your sister," Helen would scold, even if I hadn't done a thing. And if Lily ever got caught doing something wrong, somehow, it would be twisted to be my fault. "Emily, I can't believe you do this," Dad would say, disappointment in his eyes, as Helen spun her tales, painting me as the instigator and Lily as the innocent. But despite the pain, the unfairness of it all, a small part of me held on to hope. Hope that one day, things would change. That one day, Dad would see through Helen's lies. That one day, I'd be able to leave this all behind and find a place where I belonged, a place where I was more than just the unwanted stepdaughter, more than just the shadow in the background of Lily's perfect life. Life under Helen's roof was a daily grind, a test of endurance. But amidst the gloom, a flicker of light appeared, so unexpected it almost felt like a dream. It happened one ordinary evening, the kind that usually passed in silence or with Helen's sharp words cutting through the air. I was in my room, lost in my books, the only escape I had from the dreariness of my existence, when Dad's voice broke through the quiet. "Emily, come down here. We need to talk," he called, his tone more serious than usual. Curiosity piqued, I hesitated for a moment, wondering what I might have done wrong this time. As I made my way downstairs, I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of him. Helen was there too, her eyes wary, a frown creasing her forehead. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad cleared his throat, his eyes meeting mine. "Emily, I've been thinking. It's about time we discussed your future. You're graduating soon, and..." Helen cut in, her voice sharp. "Yes, Emily. Your father thinks it's time you stood on your own 2 feet. Isn't that right, John?" But Dad shook his head, silencing her with a look. "What I'm trying to say is, your mother, God rest her soul, she left something for you. For your education. It's enough to get you through college." I stood there, stunned, the words barely sinking in. "College? You mean, I can go to college?" Helen scoffed. "Oh, now she's interested. Thought you'd be too busy feeling sorry for yourself to care about your future." Dad's gaze hardened. "Enough, Helen. This isn't about you. Emily, your mother wanted this for you. She set aside this money before she passed. It's yours, and I think it's what she would have wanted." The room spun around me. College. A chance to escape, to build a life away from the cold stares and harsh words. I felt a lump in my throat, a mix of gratitude and an overwhelming sense of what this meant. "Thank you, Dad. I don't know what to say," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Helen snorted. "Well, don't get too excited. It's not a free ride. You'll have to work hard, prove that you're not just wasting your mother's hard-earned money." But her words, usually so cutting, couldn't pierce the bubble of hope that had formed around me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a path forward, a way out. The following weeks were a blur of applications, forms, and preparations. Helen's barbs continued, but they bounced off me, unable to puncture the shield of determination I had built. I was going to college, stepping into a future that was mine to shape. And as I packed my bags, ready to leave the house that had never truly felt like home, I looked back, not with sadness, but with a sense of closure. This was more than just leaving, it was the first step toward finding myself, toward healing the wounds of the past and building a life where I was more than just the unwanted stepdaughter, more than just a shadow in a cold, unloving home. Helen watched me with a smirk as I headed for the door. "Don't think this is the end, Emily. Life's not that kind. You'll learn soon enough." I met her gaze, my resolve unshaken. "Maybe. But at least I'll be learning, growing, and most importantly, living on my terms." With those final words, I stepped out, the weight of the past lifting with each step I took. The future was uncertain, daunting even, but it was mine, and that was all that mattered. Leaving home for college was like taking a deep breath after years underwater. I was off to study law in a city miles away from the stifling walls of my past. I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and relief as the bus pulled away, the familiar sights fading into the distance. Life in college was a whirlwind of lectures, libraries, and late-night study sessions. I threw myself into the law, finding solace in the clarity of statutes and the fairness of justice, so different from the life I'd known. Holidays would come, and I'd send my wishes back home, but the silence that returned was deafening. No happy birthday, no Merry Christmas, just the echo of my own voice in the void. Years slipped by, and my hard work paid off. Graduation day came, and I walked across that stage, not just with a degree in hand, but with the satisfaction of having done it on my own. I landed a job at a small law firm, throwing myself into the world of briefs and courtrooms. I was 25, standing on my own 2 feet, carving out my place in the world. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang one lazy Sunday afternoon. The screen flashed "Dad," making my heart skip a beat. "Hello?" I answered, my voice cautious. "Emily, it's your dad. I know it's been a while, and I'm sorry for that. I'm not doing too well, health-wise. And I've been thinking, maybe it's time to mend fences, you know?" His voice was weaker than I remembered, laced with a regret that tugged at my heartstrings. "Dad, of course, I want that too. How are you? What's wrong?" The concern in my voice surprised even me. "It's a long story, Em. I've got some health issues, and well, it made me realize, life's too short for grudges, or what have been. I miss you, kiddo." Hearing the word "miss" from him, after all these years, it did something to me. It was as if a small, locked-away part of my heart creaked open. "I miss you too, Dad. I can come visit, see how you're doing. We can talk, try to start over." I found myself saying, the words spilling out before I could weigh them. That'd mean the world to me, Em. Really. The call ended with a promise to visit soon, leaving me in a whirlwind of emotions. For so long, I'd built up walls, prepared myself to go through life without my family. And now, with just a few words, those walls seemed less impenetrable. As I was packing my suitcases in my car, I realized that this wasn't just a journey back home. It was a journey into the unknown, a chance to heal old wounds, to bridge the gap that time and silence had widened. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself looking forward to what lay ahead. The drive back to my hometown felt longer than it actually was. Each mile closer to the house where I grew up made my heart race a little faster. I hadn't been back since I left for college, and the thought of facing them all again was daunting. Pulling into the driveway, I sat for a moment, gathering my thoughts. The house looked the same, yet different somehow, smaller and less intimidating than in my memories. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked up to the front door. Before I could even knock, it swung open, and there was Helen, her eyes scrutinizing me from head to toe. "Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter. Back from the big city, huh? Still dressing like you're on a budget, I see," Helen sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. I felt the old familiar sting of her words, but I wasn't the same timid girl anymore. "Clothes don't make a person, Helen. It's what's inside that matters," I replied, my voice steady. Her laugh was harsh, devoid of warmth. "Look at you, all grown up and spouting wisdom. Come in then. Your father's been asking about you." As I stepped into the house, memories flooded back, each room a reminder of the years I'd spent under Helen's critical eye. I found Dad in the living room, a shadow of his former self, looking frail and tired. "Dad," I said softly, approaching him. His eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of emotion, a mix of sadness and relief. "Emily, you're here. I've been thinking about you, about everything. I wasn't there for you when you needed me most. I'm sorry, so sorry for that." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. "It's okay, Dad. We can't change the past. What's important is that we're here now." He nodded, his hand reaching out weakly, and I took it, a silent acknowledgement of forgiveness and a tentative step toward healing. Helen watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Well, this is touching. The perfect family reunion," she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. I chose to ignore her jab, focusing instead on Dad. "How have you been, really?" I asked, concern lacing my words. "It's been tough, Emily. The illness, it takes a lot out of me. But having you here, it means more than you know," he replied, his voice weak, but genuine. Behind Helen, I noticed Lily peeking in, her expression curious. She was no longer the little girl I remembered, but an 18-year-old young woman, looking unsure of where she fit into this unexpected family gathering. "Lily, come here." "It's been a long time," I said, offering her a small smile. She hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. "Hi, Emily. You look different," she said, her tone cautious, but not unkind. "Different good, I hope," I replied, trying to break the ice. She gave a small, uncertain smile. "Yeah, different good." The conversation was awkward, the years of distance and Helen's influence hanging heavily between us. But it was a start, a small crack in the wall that had separated us for so long. In the days that followed, I found a small apartment nearby and settled into a routine of visiting Dad, trying to make up for lost time. Our talks were sometimes painful, often healing, a mix of regret and rediscovery. Helen's presence was a constant challenge, her remarks a reminder of the past. But the change in Dad, the softening of Lily, it gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to be a family again, flawed and fractured, but together in our own way. Life in my hometown was settling into a rhythm, a delicate balance between the past and the present. Dad's health was a constant worry, but our newfound bond brought a sense of peace that had been missing for years. However, the calm was soon to be disrupted in a way I never anticipated. One evening, as I was leaving Dad's house, Helen cornered me in the hallway, her eyes glinting with an unfamiliar intensity. "Emily, your father wants to talk about something important. Something about his will. You should be there," she said, her voice low and urgent. Surprised by her seriousness, I nodded. "Okay, Helen. Let's see what Dad has to say." We gathered in the living room, the air thick with anticipation. Dad looked more somber than usual, a stack of papers on the table in front of him. Lily sat quietly, her eyes darting between Dad and me. "Emily, Lily, I've been doing a lot of thinking. Life's thrown us some curveballs, and it's made me realize how important it is to put things in order," Dad began, his voice steady but strained. Helen interjected, her tone sharp. "John, just get to the point. What are you trying to say?" Dad took a deep breath. "I've decided to revise my will. Emily, I've not been fair to you, not for a long time. I want to make it right. I'm leaving you a portion of my estate, $300,000. It's what your mother would have wanted." The room went silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Helen's face turned a shade paler, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You can't be serious, John. Emily's been gone for years, and now she just waltzes back in and you're giving her part of our family's estate? What about Lily?" Helen's voice was sharp, her words slicing through the tension. Dad remained firm. "It's my decision, Helen. Emily is my daughter, and she deserves this. It's long overdue." I was speechless, the emotion swirling inside me too complex to untangle. Gratitude, guilt, and a sense of vindication all mixed together. Lily finally spoke up, her voice small but clear. "Dad, it's your choice. I just want us to be a family again. That's more important than any will." Helen shot her a withering look, but said nothing. The tide had shifted, the dynamics of our family changing in ways I never imagined. Weeks turned into a tentative dance of civility in the house. I'd drop by often, each visit less tense than the last, almost normal. Helen, to my surprise, was behaving decently, her usual sharp tongue seemingly dulled. One sunny afternoon, as I was leaving Dad's place, Helen approached me, a hint of unease in her eyes. "Emily, I hate to ask, but can I borrow your car? Mine's broken down, and I have an important errand." "I wouldn't bother you otherwise," she said, her voice almost too casual. I hesitated, the keys to my car heavy in my pocket. But seeing her seemingly genuine distress, I relented. "Sure, Helen. Just be careful, all right?" I said, handing her the keys. She offered a rare smile. "Thank you, Emily. You're a lifesaver." I left by taxi, a nagging unease in the pit of my stomach. The next day, I returned to pick up my car, expecting to find it parked outside. But the space was empty. Confusion turned to concern as I hurried inside. "Helen, where's my car?" "It's not outside," I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up from her magazine, her expression one of confusion. "What do you mean? It should be right out front. You gave me the keys, remember?" Dad, seated at the table, chimed in, his brow furrowed. "Lily took the car out early this morning. Didn't she tell you, Helen?" Helen's face went pale. "No, she didn't." "Why would she take your car, Emily?" "She knows it's not hers to use." Before I could respond, my phone rang, the sound slicing through the tension. It was the local police. My heart sank as the officer on the line explained that my car had been involved in an accident. Lily was driving, and the brakes had failed. She was in the hospital. The room spun as I relayed the news. Helen let out a gasp, clutching her chest as she staggered, then collapsed into a chair. "Oh God, what have I done?" she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Dad and I exchanged a look of confusion and horror. "Helen, what are you talking about? What have you done?" I demanded, my voice rising with panic. When she finally composed herself, her words sent chills down my spine. I tampered with the brakes, thinking it would be you driving, not Lily. Oh God, I was so angry about the will, about everything. I never meant for Lily to get hurt." The confession hit like a punch to the gut. Disbelief, rage, and shock coursed through me as Dad called the police, his hands shaking. The room, once a place of tense reconciliation, was now a scene of betrayal and devastation. As the reality of Helen's actions sank in, the world as I knew it crumbled. The fragile peace we'd built, the family we'd tried to mend, it was all shattered by a single, unthinkable act. And as we waited for the police to arrive, the weight of what had happened, of what could have happened, was suffocating. I was torn between concern for Lily, lying in a hospital bed because of a malicious act meant for me, and the betrayal by Helen, a woman who had proven she was capable of the unimaginable. The road to healing and forgiveness had been hard enough, but now, it felt impossible. The police arrived, their arrival a stark reminder of how quickly life can spiral out of control. Helen was taken away, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. Dad and I sat in silence, the weight of her confession hanging heavy between us. I can't believe she would do something like this. To her own daughter. Dad's voice broke, the betrayal cutting him deeper than any illness ever could. I reached out, taking his hand. "Dad, we need to be strong, for Lily. She needs us now more than ever." He nodded, his eyes moist with unshed tears. "You're right, Emily. It's just, all these years, I never knew the person I was sharing my life with." The following days were a blur of hospital visits and legal procedures for divorce. Lily was stable, but the road to recovery was going to be long. Seeing her in that hospital bed, so fragile, so innocent, it stirred a protectiveness in me I didn't know I had. One evening, as we sat by her bedside, Lily's voice, weak but clear, broke the silence. "Emily, I'm sorry. For everything. I never knew. I never thought." I squeezed her hand gently. "Lily, it's not your fault. You didn't know. We're going to get through this, together." Dad, who had been a silent presence, spoke up. "Both of you, you're my girls. What Helen did, it's unforgivable. But we're a family, and we're going to heal, move forward." The days turned into weeks, and slowly, life began to find a new rhythm. Helen's trial was the talk of the town, but within the walls of our home, we focused on healing, on rebuilding the broken bonds. Lily's recovery was a miracle in itself. Each small step, each smile, was a victory, a testament to her strength. And as she grew stronger, so did the bond between us. "Dad, I've been thinking," I said one evening as we sat in the living room, a semblance of peace settling around us. "Maybe it's time for a fresh start. A new beginning for all of us." Dad looked at me, understanding dawning in his eyes. You're right, Emily. We've been given a second chance, and we shouldn't waste it. Let's leave the past where it belongs and build a new future, for us, for Lily. And so we did. We sold the old house, the place of so many painful memories, and found a new home, a place where the shadows of the past couldn't reach us. It wasn't easy, starting over, but with each other, we found the strength to move forward, to create a new story, one filled with hope and love.
All right, where to start? I guess I'll just dive right in. I'm Ellie, your typical 26-year-old with a job that keeps me on my toes and a love life that's actually, surprisingly, the best part of my day. That's all thanks to Jack, my fiancé. He popped the question 3 months ago, and I still get giddy thinking about it. We've set the date, and the wedding's supposed to be this big, beautiful bash in 3 months. But man, planning a wedding is like having another full-time job. So there's me, excited and stressed in equal parts. Then there's Jack, the man of the hour, who's just as swamped at his job as I am at mine. We're the dynamic duo, trying to juggle spreadsheets and seating charts, conference calls, and cake tastings. One evening, after a particularly long day, Jack and I were slumped on our couch, our living room littered with brochures and to-do lists. "Ellie," Jack said, rubbing his eyes, "how are we going to manage all this?" I shrugged, feeling the weight of exhaustion. "I don't know, Jack. Maybe we should just elope." Jack chuckled. "Tempting, but you know you want the big family shindig." He wasn't wrong. I did want the big do. Family, friends, the whole 9 yards. But at that moment, it felt like climbing a mountain without any gear. The next day, Dad called. He's been my rock since Mom passed away when I was 6. And since then, it's been him and me, until Vivian, my stepmom, came into the picture. I'd like to say we were the picture-perfect family, but that'd be a stretch. "Ellie, how's the wedding prep going?" Dad's voice was full of that fatherly concern that meant he was about to offer advice I probably didn't want. I sighed into the phone. "It's going, Dad. Slow, but going." There was a pause, and I knew something was up. "Listen, sweetheart, I've been thinking. Vivian could help you out. She's got a knack for organizing events and such." I paused, a little taken aback. Vivian and I had a civil but cold relationship. The idea of her helping with the most important day of my life was unsettling. I'm not sure that's a great idea, Dad," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. But before I could add anything else, Vivian's voice was suddenly on the line. "Ellie, darling, I overheard. I'd love to help with the wedding. It'll be fabulous, you'll see." Her voice was sweet, too sweet, like syrup over poison ivy. But Dad was giving me a give her a chance look through the phone. I could feel it. "Thanks, Vivian. That's really generous," I said, with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Jack, who'd overheard the conversation, gave me a raised eyebrow. "Are you sure about this?" he mouthed. I shook my head, mouthing back, "Nope, but what choice do I have?" So that was that. Vivian was on board as our wedding planner. Jack squeezed my hand, a silent show of support. I squeezed back, hoping I wasn't just handing over the keys to a bulldozer ready to take down my dream day. But hey, that's the risk you take when you're trying to pull off the biggest party of your life, with a 9 to 5 that's more like a 5 to 9. Fingers crossed, right? Vivian entered the picture when I was just 6, a little while after Mom died. Dad was grieving and, I guess, lonely. So when Vivian came along with her big smiles and bigger promises, he fell for it. I wanted to be happy for him, really, I did. But there was something about Vivian that set off my 6-year-old alarm bells. I remember the day she moved in. I was playing with my dolls in what used to be Mom's garden, and she came out, all dolled up and looking at me like I was a spot on her perfect dress. "Ellie, darling, why don't you play inside? You're getting all dirty out here," she said in that voice that pretended to care, but didn't really. I just stared at her, clutching my doll tighter. "Mom liked it when I played here. She said the flowers needed my laughter." Vivian had this little twitch of a frown before plastering on a smile. "Well, I'm sure your mom also liked you clean and tidy. Come on, let's find you something less messy to do." It didn't get better from there. Not long after, Lara was born. And don't get me wrong, I love my little sister more than anything. But with Lara's arrival, I became more of a nuisance than a daughter to Vivian. I sat on my far-off room bed, the one that had been pushed aside to make space for Lara's nursery. Dad knocked and came in, sitting beside me with a worried look. "Ellie, you haven't been spending much time with Vivian and Lara," Dad said gently. "Don't you want to get to know your sister?" I nodded, fiddling with the edge of my bedspread. "I do, Dad. It's just... Vivian doesn't really want me around." Dad's brow creased. "What makes you say that?" It was hard to put into words. The way Vivian's presence made the air heavier, made the house less of a home. "She's always telling me to go play somewhere else, to stay quiet, to not bother you or Lara." Dad hugged me then, tight. "Ellie, Vivian just wants what's best for all of us. Give her some time. You'll see." But time didn't change much. As we grew up, Lara got everything shiny and new, while I got her hand-me-downs and gently used stuff from secondhand stores. One day I finally asked Vivian about it. "Vivian, why does Lara get new clothes and I don't?" I was older then, more aware of the discrepancies. She looked down at me, her eyes cool and detached. "Ellie, I just think it's important for you to learn to be grateful for what you have. Lara is... well, she's younger. She needs to feel special." "But I want to feel special too," I murmured, more to myself than to her. Vivian didn't respond to that, just turned away with that air of finality that ended all discussions. I learned then that some battles just weren't worth fighting. Not then, at least. So, when Dad suggested Vivian help with the wedding, all those years of being second best, of feeling like an outsider in my own home, they all bubbled up. But Dad was looking at me with hopeful eyes, and I just couldn't say no. Not to him. "All right, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's see what Vivian can do." Planning a wedding is tough, right? Try doing it with someone who's got their own idea of what your big day should look like. Vivian was like a whirlwind, swooping in with her planners and swatches, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We sat at the kitchen table one afternoon, surrounded by what looked like a stationery store's exploded inventory. Vivian was flipping through a binder that had more tabs than my browser after a night of online shopping. "So, Ellie," she began, not looking up from her binder, "I was thinking we should go with a winter wonderland theme. White, ice blue, a hint of silver. Elegant, sophisticated." I bit my lip. Actually, Jack and I were hoping for something more colorful. Warm colors, you know? It's a celebration, not a gala. Vivian finally looked up, her smile tight. "Darling, trust me. The winter theme is very in vogue right now. It'll be beautiful." I tried to push back a little. "But it's our wedding, not a trend show. We want it to feel personal." She sighed, as if I were a child who didn't understand the concept of money. "Fine. Give me your ideas, and I'll see what I can do to make them tasteful." Ouch. That stung. But I pressed on, outlining the vision Jack and I had. Lots of greens, deep reds, like an enchanted forest. I even had a Pinterest board ready to show her. Vivian scrolled through my phone, her face unreadable. "Charming," she said flatly. "I'll take it into consideration." That was Vivian speak for, "I'll do what I want." I should have known then that things weren't going to go smoothly. Jack seemed to sense it too when I told him about our discussion. He frowned, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. "You sure you want to go through with this? We can still do it ourselves. Or get a professional." I shook my head. Dad's already stressed with work, and I don't want to pile on. Plus, how bad can it be? Famous last words, right? The next few weeks were a blur of work and wedding chaos. Vivian would call me at random times, rattling off decisions she'd made. "Ellie, I've booked the church and the reception hall, and I found the perfect caterer. Who needs a tasting, right? Oh, and I took the liberty of choosing your dress. You'll love it." I'd blink, trying to process her words while my boss waved at me to join a meeting. Thanks, Vivian, but shouldn't I try on the dress first?" "There's no time," she'd insist. "It's all under control." But it didn't feel under control. It felt like I was being steamrolled by a smile and a clipboard. The crunch came with the guest list, Jack and I had spent nights agonizing over it, making sure no one was left out. I handed the list to Vivian on a Sunday, our only day off together. "Here's the final list. It's got everyone on it." Vivian glanced at it and tutted. "This is far too many people, Ellie. We'll have to cut it down. Quality over quantity." My heart sank. But these are our friends and family. We can't just not invite them. Vivian patted my hand, her rings cold against my skin. "Leave it to me. I'll handle it." I should have grabbed that list and run. I should have said something, done something. But I was tired, and a part of me, maybe the part that still wanted to believe in good old stepmom magic, thought it might be okay. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, the kind of day you'd order out of a catalog. I woke up with those pre-wedding jitters, you know? Butterflies doing a tap dance in my stomach. Jack sent me a text that just said, "Today's the day we've been waiting for. I love you." That should have been enough to calm the storm inside me. I should have been greeted by a room bustling with bridesmaids and the usual pre-wedding chaos. But instead, I found myself staring into the mirror in a quiet room, alone. Lara was supposed to be here by now, and my friends. Where was everyone? My phone buzzed, and it was Lara, sounding like she was on the verge of tears. "Ellie, I'm so sorry. I'm running late. The hairdresser had a mix-up with the time, and now they're rushing to get us all done." I took a deep breath. "It's okay, Lara. Just get here when you can, okay?" "Of course, Ellie. I wouldn't miss this for the world," Lara said, her voice firm with sisterly resolve. I put the phone down and tried to focus on getting ready. The dress was beautiful, even if I hadn't picked it out. Vivian had taste, I'd give her that. But it was the silence that got to me. The lack of laughter, the missing chit-chat. It didn't feel like a wedding morning. It felt like any other day, except I was putting on a really fancy dress. By the time I got to the church, my heart was racing, not from excitement, but from a creeping sense of dread. Jack's reassuring smile from across the aisle was the only thing that kept me from bolting. The church should have been packed. Instead, there were gaps in the pews like missing teeth. Whispers echoed off the high ceilings, filling the spaces where our friends and family should have been. Vivian was flitting about, pretending to adjust flowers that didn't need adjusting. I cornered her just before the music started. "Vivian, where is everyone?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. She gave me that plastic smile, the one that never quite made it to her eyes. "Oh, darling, I'm afraid there must have been some sort of postal error. A lot of invitations got returned. So unfortunate." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Postal error? How does that even happen nowadays? Did you even send them out?" Vivian looked around, then leaned in close. "These things happen, Ellie. It's out of our hands. Let's not make a scene. It's your day to shine." But shine for whom? The empty seats? The quiet where there should have been joy? I stood there, the organ music starting up, and I realized this was it. The day I dreamed of was starting to look like a nightmare. Jack's eyes met mine from across the church, a silent question in their depths. I squared my shoulders. No way was I letting Vivian's mistakes, or sabotage, a nasty little voice whispered, ruin the day I'd marry the man I loved. When we got to the reception, my heart sank even lower. The place looked like someone's idea of a bad joke. The colors, the decorations, it was all wrong. It was like walking into a different couple's wedding. Where were the rich colors, the warm ambience we wanted? Jack squeezed my hand as we stood at the entrance, taking it all in. "Hey, it's unique," he said, trying to find a silver lining. But his eyes couldn't hide his disappointment. I tried to laugh it off. Unique is one word for it. We found Vivian, who was directing the staff with more enthusiasm than a game show host. "Vivian!" I called out, marching over. "What happened here? This isn't what we talked about." Vivian turned, her eyebrows raising in mock surprise. "Oh, Ellie, you're here! Well, I just thought this would be so much more exquisite. It's very chic, don't you think?" "Chic?" I echoed, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "We wanted warm and welcoming, not this ice palace." Some of the guests turned to look, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Vivian's eyes darted to them, and her tone shifted to a soothing whisper. "Let's not get upset, darling. Today is about you and Jack. Let's not spoil it with decor disagreements." I felt Jack's hand on my back, a gentle reminder. He leaned in and whispered, "Let's just get through this, for us." So we did. We put on our best smiles, greeted the few guests, and tried to make the best of it. Then came the moment for the cake cutting. Only there was no cake. Just an empty table with a knife lying there like a lone soldier after a battle. "Vivian," I said slowly, feeling numb, "where's the cake?" She blinked, then clapped a hand to her mouth. "Oh, the cake! I knew I forgot something. Silly me, I must have missed that detail." Jack's aunt, who'd had more than her fair share of the bubbly, piped up from a nearby table. "No cake? At a wedding? Now I've seen everything." The room erupted into whispers and murmurs. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I wasn't going to give Vivian the satisfaction of seeing me cry. It was Laura, bless her, who saved the day. She slipped out quietly, and before we knew it, she was back with an armful of boxes. "We'll have cake," she declared, setting the boxes on the table and starting to arrange the assorted pastries with a flourish. "Let's call it a dessert buffet, shall we?" The guests applauded, some out of support, others probably because it was the most entertainment they'd had all day. The reception was teetering on the edge of disaster, but Laura's quick thinking with the cakes from the pastry shop had given it a heartbeat again. Watching her rush back in with those boxes, I felt a mix of gratitude and something like pride. She was the little sister who'd watched and learned from all the nonsense Vivian put me through, always ready to jump in. "Where did you find these?" I asked, peeking into the boxes filled with eclairs, tarts, and cupcakes. Laura was all action, arranging them with a flourish. "There's a little shop down the street. I just told them it was for my sister's wedding, and they packed up everything sweet they had." I hugged her, maybe a little too tightly. "You're amazing, you know that?" She grinned, wiping her hands on her apron. "I do now. Go on. Enjoy your party. I've got this." And she did. Guests started milling around the table, picking out their desserts. There was laughter and chatter, the warm sounds of a wedding reception that had been missing before. Jack leaned over to me, a chocolate cupcake in hand. "Your sister's something else," he said with a chuckle. "Yeah, she is," I agreed, the tension in my shoulders easing just a bit. The party started to feel like a party, even if it was nothing like we planned. People were smiling, dancing, and the room was filled with the clinking of glasses and the soft buzz of conversation. As Jack and I mingled with our guests, thanking them for coming, my dad pulled me aside. He looked stern, the way he did when he meant business. "Ellie, your stepmom. She's been acting odd all day. Are you sure everything's okay?" I sighed. "I don't know, Dad. It's like everything's gone wrong on purpose." He put an arm around me. "We'll talk about this later, okay? For now, just focus on Jack and the good parts of today." I nodded, knowing he was right. But as the evening wound down, I caught snatches of a conversation that made my blood run cold. Vivian was on the phone, tucked away in a corner. I only heard a bit of it, but it was enough. Couldn't stand the thought of her happy day. Yes, I did it. And I'd do it again. Yes, that's exactly what I suspected, but still these words were like a punch in the gut. I hurried to tell Dad about the overheard conversation. The night could have been a total wash, but it turned out pretty okay in the end. And as Jack and I swayed to the music, his forehead pressed against mine, I realized that this was all I needed. The love of my life, my loyal sister, and a room full of second-choice desserts that somehow tasted better than any wedding cake ever could. After the half-hearted toasts and the uneasy laughter had died down, my father cornered Vivian near the coat room. I could tell by the tightness in his jaw and the stiff set of his shoulders that the truth I feared was finally coming to light. "Vivian, what the hell happened today?" Dad's voice was a low rumble of contained fury. "Ellie told me what you said. You deliberately ruined her wedding?" Vivian's face twisted into something ugly, a snarl that I had never seen before. "Yes, I did. I've always hated her. She's nothing but a reminder of what was here before me. Her perfect life, her perfect wedding. It's more than I could stand." I felt like I'd been slapped. The venom in her voice was almost palpable. My father, though, he turned an alarming shade of red. Hated my daughter? My daughter? His voice rose, and people nearby started to turn and look. You're her stepmother. You promised to take care of her as your own. Vivian scoffed, and her laughter was a bitter sound. Take care of her? I've had to live in her shadow, Tom. Every single day. Well, not anymore. I won't let her have a perfect day if it's the last thing I do. That's it, Dad said, his voice now shaking with anger. I'm done. Our marriage is over, Vivian. The crowd had hushed, all eyes on the unfolding drama. Vivian seemed to deflate, her momentary outburst of rage giving way to panic. Tom, please! I didn't mean… You didn't mean it? Dad's voice boomed now, echoing off the walls. You've ruined what's supposed to be the happiest day of our daughter's life. Get out! Get out of my sight! Dad's hands were trembling as he pointed toward the door. Vivian looked around, her eyes wild, seeking an ally and finding none. With nowhere left to turn, she stumbled toward the exit, her exit as dramatic as the mess she'd left behind. I felt numb, watching the woman who'd been a constant, though often cold, presence in my life being exiled by the man who had loved her. My father turned to me, his eyes softening. Ellie, I'm so sorry. I had no idea, he stammered, reaching for me. It's okay, Dad, I said, the shock giving way to an odd sense of relief. It's over now. The last of the guests had trickled away, leaving the venue in a hushed stillness that felt like the calm after a storm. Dad was off somewhere, probably dealing with the fallout of Vivian's exit, while I found myself sitting at an empty table, my wedding dress a crumpled mess of white around me. You okay? It was my sister Lara, her young face lined with worry that seemed too heavy for her years. I managed a weary smile. Yeah, I think I will be. She sat next to me, her hand finding mine. I'm sorry, Ellie, for everything Mom did. I shook my head. Not your fault, never was. There was a pause, the kind that's full of words that people are too scared to say out loud. It was Lara who finally broke it. Dad's really mad, isn't he? Yeah, I haven't seen him like that, ever. Lara bit her lip. What's going to happen now? I sighed. Divorce, I guess. It's not just about what happened today. It's been a long time coming. She nodded, understanding more than a kid her age should. And us? I squeezed her hand, a promise in my grip. We're sisters. That's not going to change. We'll stick together, okay? Okay, Lara said, a small smile breaking through. You and Jack gonna try for another wedding? I chuckled, the sound strange and distant to my own ears. I think we've had enough excitement for a while. Maybe we'll just elope. Elope? Lara's eyebrows went up. That sounds kind of fun. It does, doesn't it? The idea was growing on me. The possibility of a celebration without drama. Just Jack and me. Dad's coming, Lara said suddenly, and I looked up to see him approaching, his face worn but his eyes clear. Ellie, he said, his voice gentle. I'm so sorry. If there's anything… I stood up and hugged him, cutting off his apology. It's not your fault, Dad. We'll get through this. We stood there, the three of us in an embrace that felt like it could hold up the world if it needed to. It was the end of a wedding, sure, but it felt more like a beginning, the start of something new and hopeful. Let's go home, I said, and as we walked out together, I thought that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind us.
I remember the day Clara walked into our lives like it was yesterday. Dad had been all work and no play since Mom passed away in that accident. I was too young to really remember her, but the pictures around the house and the way Dad talked about her made me miss her like crazy. Anyway, it was a cold Tuesday evening when Dad said we needed to talk. I figured it might be about another move, or maybe he was finally going to get me that puppy I kept asking for. Boy, was I off the mark. Chloe, Dad started, his voice serious, which was my cue to really pay attention. I've met someone. My heart sank. Not because I didn't want him to be happy, but because the thought of someone trying to replace Mom felt like a betrayal. But I was just a kid, what did I know about adult stuff like loneliness and moving on? She's beautiful, kind, and I really think you'll like her, he continued, trying to sound upbeat. The doorbell rang, cutting our conversation short. Dad went to answer it, and in came Clara. Even to my young eyes, she was stunning, like those ladies in the fashion magazines my nanny sometimes flipped through. But it was her smile that caught me off guard, it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Chloe, this is Clara," Dad introduced us, his voice full of hope. "Hi," I muttered, unsure of what else to say. "Hello, Chloe. You're just as adorable as your father described," Clara said, her voice sweet but somehow distant. Dinner that night was an awkward affair. Dad was trying too hard, Clara was politely distant, and I just wanted to disappear. The conversation was mostly between Dad and Clara, with me throwing in a yeah or no when absolutely necessary. "So, Chloe," Clara eventually turned her attention to me, her tone a bit too sugary. "Your dad tells me you love animals." "Yeah, I guess," I replied, not really in the mood to chat. "We'll have to see about getting you involved in some animal charity work. It's good for young girls to learn responsibility," she said, the suggestion sounding more like a decree. Dad seemed pleased with the idea, but I wasn't fooled. I could tell when adults were just saying things to make conversation. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and too many please and thank yous. After Clara left, Dad was eager to know what I thought about her. "Well, she's nice," I said, which was kid code for "I haven't decided if I like her yet, but I don't want to upset you." Dad laughed, a sound I hadn't heard much of since Mom died. "Give her a chance, Chloe. Clara's been through a lot too. She understands loss like we do." In the days that followed, Clara's presence became more pronounced. Her things started appearing around the house, and her visits became more frequent. Each time, she tried to engage with me, offering to do my hair or take me shopping, but it all felt too structured, too calculated. There was no warmth, no genuine connection. It was as if she was playing a role rather than genuinely trying to be a part of our family. "Dad, why does she always look at me like that?" I finally asked one evening, after Clara had left from one of her increasingly regular visits. "Like what, Chloe?" Dad looked puzzled, his forehead creasing. "Like she's studying me, figuring out her next move," I said, struggling to put my feelings into words. Dad sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Clara's just trying to find her way, to connect with you. It's all new to her, being a stepmom." "But I didn't ask for a stepmom," I blurted out, the words harsher than I intended. Dad's face softened, and he pulled me into a hug. "I know, kiddo. But I asked for someone to share our lives, to bring in some happiness we've been missing. Just give it some time, for me?" Ever since I can remember, animals were my thing. Dogs, cats, even the squirrels in the backyard, I loved them all. So, when I hit 10, I got this idea in my head about volunteering at the local animal shelter. It seemed like the perfect plan. I'd get to be around animals, and maybe even make a difference. But there was one big roadblock, Clara. One evening, I decided to bite the bullet and ask her. Dad was away, as usual, so it was just her and me at dinner. I pushed my peas around my plate, working up the courage. "Clara, can I talk to you about something?" I started, my voice a bit shaky. She looked up from her phone, which was a miracle in itself. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath. "I want to volunteer at the animal shelter. It's something I'm really passionate about." Clara put her phone down, which meant she was actually listening. "Volunteer, huh? And what makes you think you're ready for that kind of commitment?" I was taken aback by her tone. It wasn't supportive, it was more like she was challenging me. "I love animals, and I want to help. I think I can do it." She gave me this look, the kind that made me feel like I was 3 feet tall instead of 10. "Volunteering is hard work, Chloe. It's not just playing with puppies and kittens all day. You have to be willing to get your hands dirty." Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, I get it. I'm not afraid of hard work, I said, though her tone made me nervous. Clara smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was more like she had an idea, and I wasn't sure I'd like it. Alright, if you're serious about this, I have a proposal. How about you start by taking on more responsibilities around the house? Show me you can handle that, and we'll talk about the shelter. I nodded eagerly, willing to agree to just about anything at that point. Okay, what kind of responsibilities? For starters, you can help out more with cleaning. Take care of your own room, the living room, and the kitchen. If you manage that for a few months, we'll see about the shelter. It sounded like a lot, but I was determined. Deal. I'll start tomorrow. Good, Clara said, picking her phone back up. Remember, it's not just about starting, it's about sticking with it. We'll see how you do. The next few months were brutal. I was scrubbing, dusting, and vacuuming every day after school. It was exhausting, and more than once, I wanted to give up. But the thought of volunteering at the shelter kept me going. I imagined all the animals I'd be helping, and it gave me the strength to keep at it. Finally, after what felt like forever, I approached Clara again. I was tired, my hands were rough from all the cleaning, but I was proud of what I'd accomplished. Clara, I've been doing everything you asked. Can we talk about the shelter now? She looked me over, as if assessing whether I'd really done enough. You've been keeping up with the chores, I'll give you that. But Chloe, there's more to volunteering than just hard work. It's also about maturity, about commitment. Are you sure you're ready for that? Her words felt like a slap in the face. After all I'd done, she was still questioning me? Yes, I'm ready. I've proven I can handle responsibility. Please, I just want a chance to make a difference. Clara sighed, tapping her fingers on the table. Alright, Chloe. I'll make you a deal. Keep up with your chores, and add cooking dinner twice a week to the list. If you can manage that for another few months, we'll talk about the shelter again. It was moving the goalposts, and I knew it. But what choice did I have? Okay, I'll do it. But you have to promise we'll really talk about the shelter next time. We will, Clara said, though her voice didn't exactly inspire confidence. So, I added chef to my list of household duties, learning to cook beyond just mac and cheese. It was hard, and more than once, dinner was barely edible. But I kept at it, determined to get to that shelter one day. By the time I hit 12, I'd been playing housemaid for 2 years straight. The promise of volunteering at the animal shelter was the carrot dangling in front of me, keeping me going. I marked the calendar, counting down days like some kind of prisoner waiting for release. Finally, the day came. I approached Clara with a mix of hope and dread in my gut. Clara, I've done everything you asked. Can I start volunteering at the shelter now? My voice wobbled a bit, showing more nerves than I wanted. Clara was lounging on the sofa, flipping through a magazine like she hadn't a care in the world. She glanced up, her expression unreadable. Oh, Chloe. I was wondering when you'd bring this up again. A lump formed in my throat. Her tone wasn't promising. You said if I did all the chores and cooked, we could talk about it. I've done more than that. She sighed, setting her magazine aside with a dramatic flair. True, you've been quite helpful around here. But, Chloe, things change. You're still so young, and now I think it's best if you wait until you're 16. I felt like she'd slapped me. 16? But you promised. Anger bubbled up, raw and hot. Life isn't fair, Chloe. You'll learn that. In the meantime, there's a new deal. Keep up with your current chores, and start preparing meals for the whole family. Consider it part of your training. Training for what? To be Cinderella? I shot back, unable to hide my frustration. Clara's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, young lady. This is, for your own good. Learning to manage a household is a valuable skill. I stormed off, feeling betrayed and used. The next few months, I kept my head down, doing what was asked without complaint. But the fire inside me didn't die down, it simmered, fueled by every unfair demand Clara placed on me. One day, I accidentally overheard a conversation that blew everything wide open. Clara was on the phone, laughing about how she'd tricked me into doing all her chores while still taking Dad's money for the housekeeper and cook. He hasn't got a clue. And that naive little Chloe is working her fingers to the bone for nothing. Clara gloated. My heart raced, anger turning to ice. I confronted her as soon as she hung up. I heard you. You've been lying to me and Dad. Taking the money and making me do all the work. Why? My voice was steady, fueled by a cold fury. Clara's face went from surprise to smug in seconds. Oh, Chloe. Always so dramatic. It's not like you had anything better to do. Besides, it's high time you learned the world doesn't revolve around you. That's it. I'm telling Dad. I turned on my heel, ready to expose her deceit. The moment Dad walked through the door after his latest trip, I was on him like a shadow. I had rehearsed my speech a dozen times, but when it came down to it, the words just spilled out in a messy torrent. Dad, we need to talk, now. It's about Clara. I blurted out before he could even set down his suitcase. He looked taken aback, but nodded, leading me into the living room, away from the prying ears of Clara, who was conspicuously absent, probably out at one of her endless social events. What's going on, Chloe? Dad's voice was laced with concern, the lines on his face deepening. It's Clara. She's been lying to us, taking the money you send for the housekeeper and cook and making me do all the work instead. And she promised me something she never planned to keep. I rushed, the anger and frustration I'd bottled up pouring out. Dad's expression hardened. I'll handle this, he said, a steely note in his voice I rarely heard. The confrontation that ensued later that evening was like a live wire sparking in the house. Voices raised, words thrown like daggers, and through it all, I stood by the staircase, listening as my world seemed to crumble. Clara's response was venomous, denying everything at first, but eventually turning the argument around, making it about how ungrateful and spoiled I was. Dad wasn't having any of it. The fight ended with Clara storming out, slamming the door behind her, leaving a silence that was almost worse than the shouting. After that, things went from bad to unbearable. Clara's attitude towards me shifted into something cold and dismissive. She would come home late, stinking of alcohol, and find fault in everything. My cooking, which I had painstakingly learned to improve, was never up to her standards. What is this slop? You expect me to eat this? She'd sneer, pushing the plate away. My attempts at keeping the house clean were met with similar disdain. You call this clean? Do it again, she'd command, pointing at a spot on the floor so tiny I'd need a microscope to see it. But the final straw was when I mentioned my dream of becoming a doctor. I had saved that conversation for a time when I thought she might be in a good mood. I was wrong. A doctor? With what money? You think we're made of cash? Clara exploded, her face twisted in rage. Dad, overhearing this, intervened, and another heated argument broke out. She's not spending your money, Clara. It's my decision, and I support Chloe's dream, he said, his voice firm. Their relationship hit rock bottom after that. Clara wouldn't speak to me directly anymore. She communicated through sticky notes left around the house, each one a command for some chore or another. Walking home from school, I never expected the scene that greeted me. The house was buzzing with noise, music blaring, and strangers milling around with drinks in their hands. Confusion and irritation battled inside me as I pushed through the crowd, looking for Clara. I found her in the living room, the center of attention, dancing carelessly with some guy I'd never seen before. Clara, what's going on here? I shouted over the music, my frustration peaking. She stopped dancing, turned to me with a drink in one hand, and laughed. It was a cold, joyless sound. Oh, Chloe, dear. Haven't you heard? Your father's plane crashed. He's gone, she said, her words casual, as if she was talking about the weather. My heart stopped. What? That's not funny, Clara. She smirked, taking a sip of her drink. I wish I was joking, darling. But it's true. And now, everything here, she gestured around the lavish room, is mine. The room spun, and I could barely stand. This can't be happening, I whispered, disbelief and grief washing over me. Clara's next words were like a slap in the face. You should start packing, Chloe. There's no place for you here anymore. No one to protect you, she sneered, turning back to her party. I stumbled out of the room, my mind a whirlwind of shock and sorrow. I couldn't process it, Dad gone, and Clara, she was heartless. I locked myself in my room, picking up the phone with trembling hands. I dialed the number of Dad's old friend, Mr. Jacobs, who'd been a regular before Clara took over our lives. Mr. Jacobs, it's Chloe, I managed to say, fighting back tears. Chloe? What's wrong? His voice was filled with concern. Through sobs, I told him everything. He was silent for a moment before speaking, his tone grave. I'll be there. We'll sort this out together, Chloe. I didn't know what to do except follow his advice. I packed a bag with my most necessary belongings and documents, anything I thought I might need. As I left my room, suitcase in hand, Clara's laughter followed me out of the house. It was a sound full of victory and malice. I waited outside, feeling more alone than ever, until Mr. Jacobs pulled up. He didn't say anything, just opened the passenger door for me, his face set in a grim line. Sitting across from Mr. Jacobs in the dimly lit cafe, I felt like I was in some kind of bad dream. The noise around us faded into the background as he confirmed the devastating news about Dad. My world crumbled right there, tears streaming down my face as I tried to wrap my head around it all. Chloe, I know this is hard. I'm so sorry, Mr. Jacobs said, his voice gentle, trying to offer some comfort. I could barely speak through my sobs. How did this happen? My voice was a whisper, choked with grief. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he had to say next. There's more you need to know. Your father came to see me not long before the accident. He had suspicions about Clara, about her loyalty. He changed his will, Chloe. I looked up, wiping my eyes. Changed his will? What do you mean? He left everything to you, Chloe. The house, his assets, everything. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of, Mr. Jacobs explained, his eyes showing a mix of sadness and determination. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Dad knew? And he tried to protect me, even from afar. What do we do now? I asked, feeling a mix of anger and resolve. We take back what's yours. I suggest we call the police and go to the house. I'll be with you every step of the way, Mr. Jacobs said, already reaching for his phone. When we arrived at the house, the police were already there, waiting. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car, the reality of the situation setting in. Mr. Jacobs was by my side as we approached the entrance, where Clara stood, surrounded by the remnants of her party, a look of shock on her face. This is my house now, Clara. You need to leave, I said, my voice stronger than I felt, fueled by the injustice of it all. Clara laughed, a hollow sound, trying to mask her fear. You think you can just kick me out? This is my home too. The will says otherwise. You have no claim here. It's time for you and your guests to go, Mr. Jacobs interjected, his tone leaving no room for argument. Clara's face went pale, her eyes darting to the police officers. She knew she had lost. Without another word, she gathered her things, her guests following suit, the reality of the situation dawning on them as well. After they left, the silence of the house was deafening. It didn't feel like a victory, it felt like the beginning of a long road to healing. Mr. Jacobs helped me organize a small, respectful farewell for Dad, something that honored the man he was. I also started a book of memory, filling it with photos, stories, and little notes about Dad. It became my way of keeping him close, of remembering the good times and not letting the pain of his loss overshadow the love he had for me. Years flew by, and life had its way of moving forward. I graduated high school, with marks good enough to get me into medical college. Dad would have been proud. Alongside my studies, I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, just like I always dreamed. It was hard work but fulfilling, giving me a sense of purpose I'd longed for. Then, out of nowhere, Clara showed up at my doorstep. She looked so different, almost unrecognizable. Time and, I guessed, a hard life had taken their toll on her once flawless appearance. "Chloe, please, you have to help me," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I was taken aback, not just by her sudden appearance, but by the desperation in her voice. "Help you? What's going on?" "It's my health, Chloe. I'm sick, really sick. I need money for treatment, a lot of money," she sobbed, the story pouring out of her. Something didn't sit right with me. After everything that had happened, her showing up like this and asking for money was suspicious. "If you're really sick, show me the documents, the diagnosis. I'm studying medicine, remember? I can understand it." At that, Clara's demeanor shifted. The tears stopped as if someone had turned off a tap, and her face hardened. "You think I'm lying? You ungrateful little..." I cut her off. "No. I just need proof. If you're really sick, I want to help, but not without seeing the facts first." Clara's anger flared. "I come here, swallowing my pride, and you accuse me of lying? I don't have to prove anything to you." That was the moment I knew for sure. She was trying to play me, just like old times. "Clara, I think it's best if you leave. I won't be giving you any money without proof. And honestly, after everything, you shouldn't have come here asking for it." Her face twisted with rage, but she must have realized that making a scene wouldn't get her anywhere, especially not with me standing firm. Without another word, but with a glare that could freeze hell over, she turned and left. Life's taken a sweet turn. Here I am, living in this big, beautiful house with a yard that looks like something out of a magazine. The evenings are my favorite, just me wandering the garden or floating in the pool, thinking about how far I've come. Medical school's tough, no joke, but it's where I'm meant to be. The dream of becoming a doctor, it's closer every day. And volunteering? That's where my heart's at. I decided to put a chunk of the inheritance Dad left me into something meaningful, helping homeless animals. It's like coming full circle, back to that little girl who just wanted to make a difference. I've met some incredible folks at the shelter. We're a tight-knit crew, passionate about what we do. On the rare free weekends, we hang out, share stories, or just chill. It's a good life, a peaceful one. Clara? Haven't heard much since that day she showed up, begging for money. Rumor has it she went through some botched plastic surgery. Guess that was the treatment she needed. Can't say I'm surprised. She always did care more about appearances than what was underneath. Chloe, you coming to the fundraiser next weekend? That's Sam, one of my closest pals from the shelter, breaking into my thoughts. Yeah, wouldn't miss it. We've got a good thing going, raising money and awareness. It feels right, you know? Sam grinned. Absolutely. It's amazing what we're doing. And hey, your garden here? Perfect spot for a little pre-fundraiser gathering. I laughed. You just want another excuse to dive into the pool. Guilty as charged, Sam admitted with a chuckle. But seriously, Chloe, it's awesome what you're doing. Your dad would be proud. That hit home, warming me from the inside out. Thanks, Sam. That means a lot. He inspired me, in more ways than one. Now, it's about paying it forward, making a difference where I can. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the garden, I felt a sense of contentment. This was my path, carved out through trials and triumphs. And Clara? Well, she was just a shadow of the past, a lesson learned. It was just another Thursday night at the diner, the kind where you keep glancing at the clock, counting the minutes until you can kick off your shoes and crash on the couch. That's until Jack and his crew barged in, loud and laughing, smelling like smoke and sweat from whatever blaze they'd just conquered. They chose the largest table, right smack in the middle, impossible to ignore even if you tried. And trust me, I tried. "Hey, Carol, could we get some menus over here? And maybe your sweetest smile to go with them?" Jack hollered, winking at me as his buddies chuckled and egged him on. I rolled my eyes, forcing a smile. "Coming right up, gentlemen. Try not to burn the place down before I get back," I shot back, earning a round of laughter as I turned to fetch the menus. That night, they were celebrating Jack's 30th birthday. Between taking their orders and making sure their beers were topped off, Jack and I got to talking. He had this easy way about him, laughing loudly at his own jokes, eyes twinkling with mischief. I found myself laughing along, his charm infectious. "So, you always this tough on your customers, or am I just special?" Jack asked during one of my rounds to their table, his smile all teeth and trouble. "Only the ones who give me a hard time," I quipped, placing my hands on my hips. "You planning on being trouble?" "Only the best kind," he replied, his grin widening. "How about you give me your number, and I promise to only call during your least busy hours." I hesitated, not usually one to mix work with, well, anything else. But something about him, that daredevil smile or maybe just the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room, made me scribble down my number on a napkin. "Don't make me regret this," I warned, sliding the napkin across the table. "Never," he said, pocketing the napkin like it was a treasure. Our first date was nothing fancy, just a walk in the park, but it felt like we'd known each other for years. He talked about his job with a passion that was infectious, about running into burning buildings when everyone else was running out. It scared me, the risks he took daily, but I admired him for it. A year flew by, filled with countless dates, late-night calls, and moments where I couldn't imagine my life without him. So, when he proposed, there was no hesitation. Just a resounding yes, that I'm pretty sure they heard 3 blocks over. We got married in a small ceremony, nothing fancy, just close friends and family. Moved into the small house my grandma left me. It was our little slice of heaven, a place to start our future together. That future got a whole lot brighter when we found out I was pregnant. The idea of becoming parents, of bringing a new life into our world, filled us with an indescribable joy. When Michael arrived, it was like everything clicked into place. He was our miracle, a perfect blend of the two of us. The day we found out about Michael's condition hit us like a ton of bricks. We were in the doctor's office, Jack's hand gripping mine so tight I thought he might crush it, but I was grateful for the anchor. "So, what's the verdict, Doc? Michael's gonna be okay, right?" Jack's voice was steady, but I could hear the undercurrent of worry. The doctor sighed, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "I'm afraid it's a bit more complicated. Michael has cerebral palsy. It's affecting his muscle coordination, especially on the right side." Silence. It was like the room had suddenly run out of air. I could feel Jack stiffen beside me, his grip on my hand now a lifeline. "Cerebral what now?" "That's fixable, right? Some therapy, some exercises?" Jack's voice cracked, the tough firefighter facade crumbling. The doctor shook his head, his expression sympathetic but firm. "It's a lifelong condition. Therapy can help, yes, but it won't cure it. He'll likely face challenges." I barely heard the rest. My mind was racing, fear and confusion warring with a fierce surge of protective love for my little boy. When we left the doctor's office, the world seemed to have tilted on its axis. Jack was quiet, a rare occurrence, as we walked back to the car. Once inside, he finally spoke, his voice raw. "What did we do wrong, huh? Why our boy?" "We didn't do anything wrong, Jack. These things, they just happen. It's not about fault." My own voice sounded strange to my ears, trying to infuse strength I wasn't sure I felt. Jack slammed his hand against the steering wheel, a burst of frustration. It's not fair to him, to us. Michael's supposed to have all these chances, and now. I reached over, placing my hand over his. He'll still have chances, Jack. Maybe not the ones we imagined, but he's still our son. We'll figure this out. Together. That night, after putting Michael to bed, we sat at the kitchen table, a sea of pamphlets and printouts on cerebral palsy spread out before us. It was overwhelming, the unknowns and what-ifs piling up like a barricade. Jack looked over at me, his eyes tired but determined. We're gonna do whatever it takes, right? I mean, therapy, specialists, whatever he needs. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt like I was drowning, trying to balance therapy sessions, doctor's appointments, and just the day-to-day care Michael required. Jack was my rock, always there to take over when I was too exhausted to think straight. For years into our adventure with Michael, life decided to throw us another curveball, or maybe it was more of a blessing. I got pregnant again. We were over the moon, ecstatic about the prospect of giving Michael a sibling. And when Alex came into the world, kicking and screaming with all his might, we thought our family was complete. But as the boys grew, it became clear that things weren't going to be as straightforward as we'd hoped. Alex was as healthy as a horse, running circles around us before he could even talk properly. Michael, with his challenges, watched from the sidelines, his smile never wavering even when his eyes did. One evening, after dinner, I caught a glimpse of something in Alex's eyes that hadn't been there before. It was a look of embarrassment as he watched Michael struggle to grab his cup. I shook it off as my imagination, but it nagged at me. A few weeks later, the issue I'd been dreading reared its ugly head. I was tucking Alex into bed when he said, "Mom, why does Michael have to be so different?" His words hit me like a punch in the gut. Alex, your brother is just unique, that's all. We're all unique in our own ways. But kids at school ask questions. They don't get why he can't do things like us, Alex mumbled, looking away. I sat down beside him, taking his hand. Listen, bud. Michael may have some trouble with certain things, but he's got a lot going for him too. He's super smart, you know? And he loves you a ton. We all need to stick together, okay? Alex nodded, but I could tell he wasn't fully convinced. The divide grew as the boys got older, with Alex often refusing to be seen with Michael in public. It broke my heart, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap. Things came to a head when Alex flat out refused to be seen with Michael at school. He's always doing stuff, and then everyone laughs, Alex blurted out one afternoon, frustration and anger pouring out of him. Jack and I talked it over later that night, the worry and sadness clear in his eyes. We've got to do something, babe. This can't go on. They're brothers, they should be each other's biggest supporters, not enemies. I nodded, my mind racing for solutions. Maybe we can find something they both enjoy? Something that doesn't highlight their differences, but celebrates what they can do together. Jack agreed, and we decided to introduce more family activities, hoping to mend the rift. But deep down, I feared it wasn't going to be enough. Alex's resentment seemed to run deeper than just sibling rivalry. It felt like we were standing on the edge of a precipice, and I wasn't sure how to pull us back. The divide between Michael and Alex wasn't just a crack anymore, it felt like a chasm. As they grew into their teenage years, the differences between them only seemed to magnify, especially in Alex's eyes. He was all about appearances, hanging with the popular crowd, and, unfortunately, that crowd didn't include his brother. One evening, as we were clearing up after dinner, Alex announced he had a soccer game the next day and explicitly asked not to have Michael brought along. "Can you just not bring him tomorrow? It's really important to me," he said, not meeting my eyes. Jack, who was wiping down the table, stopped and looked at Alex sharply. "What's that supposed to mean, Alex? Why wouldn't we bring Michael?" Alex sighed, a sound of exasperation that made my heart sink. "Look, it's just embarrassing, okay?" He cheers too loud and everyone looks. I felt a lump in my throat, but before I could say anything, Michael, who'd been quiet till then, spoke up. It's fine. I don't want to go if I'm just going to embarrass you. The sadness in Michael's voice was a punch to the gut. Jack put down the cloth and walked over to him. No, son. You're not embarrassing. If anyone's being embarrassing, it's Alex for acting ashamed of his own brother. The soccer game came and went. Despite Alex's request, we all went to support him, including Michael. But the joy of watching Alex play was marred by the sight of him avoiding his brother's gaze, of Michael sitting a little apart, trying so hard to blend into the background. Things came to a head a few weeks later when Alex refused to get into the car because Michael was already seated inside. I'll just walk, he snapped, his face set in a stubborn scowl. Jack, usually the peacemaker, lost his cool. Get in the damn car, Alex. Enough of this nonsense. But Alex didn't budge. Instead, he shot back. Why do you always take his side? Just because he's got a disability doesn't mean I don't matter. That statement stopped us all in our tracks. Michael, looking hurt and bewildered, got out of the car. I'll walk too. Don't want to cause any more problems. I felt tears prickle at the corners of my eyes as I watched him walk away, his limp more pronounced with each step. Jack, visibly shaken, turned to Alex. You happy now? You've just broken your brother's heart, and for what? To save face? Is that what we taught you? Alex's face crumbled, and for a moment, I thought he'd apologize, make things right. But he didn't. He turned on his heel and started walking in the opposite direction. 35 years have flown by since Jack and I tied the knot. It's funny how time has a way of slipping through your fingers like water, leaving behind memories, both sweet and bitter. Our boys, Michael and Alex, aren't boys anymore, but grown men, each carving out his path in life. Michael, the eldest at 33, has always had a keen mind, especially for computers and IT technologies. Despite the challenges his condition posed, he never let it define him. He lives with us, turning the little office in the back into his personal tech haven. Alex, on the other hand, took a different route. At 29, he's fiercely independent, living on his own and diving into the world of marketing and advertising, with a side gig as a photographer on weekends. It's a creative outlet for him, something that's always brought him joy. Jack's still at the fire station, battling blazes and saving lives. He could have retired by now, but with expenses and the need to support the family, he's kept at it. As for me, I've remained a housewife, taking care of the house and my family, my world revolving around them. One evening, Alex decided to drop what felt like a bombshell on us. He was unusually quiet throughout dinner, pushing his food around his plate. Finally, he looked up, clearing his throat. So, I've got news, he started, his voice holding a mix of excitement and nervousness. Jack and I exchanged curious glances, waiting for him to continue. Michael looked on, equally intrigued. I'm getting married, Alex announced, a proud smile spreading across his face. The news caught us off guard. Married? To who? How come we're just hearing about this now? Jack's questions shot out like rapid fire. I was still processing the news. Married, huh? That's wonderful, Alex. Tell us about her. I managed, my heart swelling with a complex mix of emotions. Alex's grin didn't waver. Her name's Lana. She's amazing. Beautiful, works as a model. We're in love. Michael was quick to offer his congratulations, his face lighting up. That's great news, bro. But there was an awkward pause, a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. Alex seemed hesitant, glancing at Michael with an expression I couldn't quite read. And when do we get to meet this Lana? I prodded gently, trying to break the tension. Alex shifted in his seat. Well, about that. I was thinking we could have dinner this weekend. Can we maybe not bring Michael along? The request hit me like a slap. Why on earth not? I found myself asking, my voice sharper than I intended. Jack looked like he was about to blow a fuse. Alex, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Why wouldn't Michael come? Alex looked uncomfortable, picking at the edge of the tablecloth. It's just, Lana's from a different world, you know? I don't want to freak her out. I felt sick to my stomach. Freak her out? Alex, she's going to be part of this family. She should want to meet all of us, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Michael had gone silent, his expression one of hurt resignation. It's okay. Really. I don't have to go. Don't worry about it, he said quietly, but the pain in his voice was clear. But it wasn't okay. Not by a long shot. The dinner happened without Michael. Meeting Lana, I could see the attraction. She was stunning, yes, but there was a coldness about her, a superficiality that didn't sit right with me. Throughout dinner, Alex played the doting fiancé, his attention solely on Lana. She talked about her modeling, her plans for their wedding, and her vision for their future. It was all about appearances, about being seen in the right circles. When the topic of the wedding came up, Lana was the one to bring up finances. Weddings are so expensive, aren't they? But I guess it's the one day you get to live out your fairy tale. Alex chimed in. Actually, we were hoping you could help us out with that. With the wedding expenses, I mean. Jack and I exchanged a look, the request not entirely unexpected but still a bit surprising in its directness. We'll see what we can do, Jack said, his tone neutral. The evening ended with Alex dropping the bomb about the diamond ring, a ring that cost more than $7,000. Jack and I were speechless. As we paid for dinner, an absurdly expensive affair, the weight of what was happening began to sink in. Our son was drifting further away from us, wrapped up in a world of appearances and materialism. The run-up to Alex's wedding was nothing short of a circus, and Jack and I, we were the ones juggling the most. Bills piled up as we covered almost every cost of the wedding. Alex claimed he'd blown his share on Lana's dress and his suit, saying they had to look perfect for the big day. The real kicker came the evening of the wedding rehearsal. Alex cornered us, his face all serious like he was about to drop some deep truth. Mom, Dad, I gotta talk to you about the wedding, he started, avoiding looking directly at any of us. What's up? I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. Michael stood a bit behind, trying to catch a glimpse of Alex's face. Alex took a deep breath, and what came out next floored me. I think it's best if Michael doesn't come to the wedding. Actually, it might be better if none of you did. Jack's face went from confused to angry in a split second. Excuse me? What the hell are you saying, Alex? Alex rushed on, words tumbling out in a mess. Look, there's gonna be a lot of important people there, public figures, you know? And, well, you guys, it's just not the right fit. Lana thinks so too. I'll send you some photos, okay? I felt as if I'd been slapped. Tears welled up, and no matter how hard I blinked, they wouldn't stop. Not the right fit? Alex, are you hearing yourself? You're asking your own family to not attend your wedding? Michael stepped forward, his voice soft but filled with hurt. Is it because of me? Because I'll embarrass you? No, it's not like that. Alex began, but he couldn't finish. The look on his face said it all. Jack was beside himself, anger and disbelief mixing in a way I'd rarely seen. We raised you better than this, Alex. This is your brother, and we're your parents. How can you stand there and say these things? I couldn't bear it. Grabbing my coat, I headed for the door, with Jack and Michael close behind. Alex didn't stop us, just watched, and that silence was worse than any words. In the car, the tears wouldn't stop. Jack reached over, squeezing my hand. We did something wrong along the way with him, but we gotta be strong now. For Michael. Michael, from the back seat, his voice cracked with emotion. This is all my fault. I'm so sorry, Mom. Pulling him into a hug as best I could from the front seat, I whispered, "Never say that. None of this is on you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to us." The ride home was quiet, each of us lost in our thoughts. It was clear Alex had chosen his path, and in doing so, he'd stepped away from us, from the family that loved him unconditionally. In trying to blend into Lana's world, he'd forgotten where he came from, who he was. A month had passed since Alex's wedding, a wedding we didn't attend, and then he and Lana showed up at our doorstep. Lana's eyes roamed around our home like she was planning a full-scale renovation, making it clear our place wasn't up to her standards. "This all needs redoing. I can't possibly live here," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Alex, eager to please her, quickly agreed. "Yeah, we'll fix it up the way you want, Lana." Jack and I were baffled. "Fix it up? For what?" I asked, my voice laced with confusion and a growing sense of dread. "That's the thing," Alex began, the words coming out rushed and rehearsed. "We're thinking of starting a family, and, well, this house is perfect for us. You and Dad, you could find a smaller place, and Michael." His words trailed off for a moment before he continued. "Michael could look into some sort of assisted living, right?" I felt my heart sink, a mix of anger and sorrow churning inside me. Before I could find the words, Alex dropped another bombshell. "Besides, I've had it tough, you know? Growing up with Michael, it wasn't easy. Got a lot of flack from people. I think I'm owed some compensation for all that humiliation." Jack and I were stunned into silence. Our son, our Alex, was sitting there, practically a stranger, talking about his brother as if he were a burden, a mistake. But before I could respond, Michael stepped forward. "Actually, I've got something to say." He told us about his company, his success, how he made it big in the tech world, and the house he bought, a house he intended as a gift for Alex and Lana. Michael was clear. "This house was meant for you, Alex, as a gift. But not anymore. Mom, Dad, we're moving. To a new place. A better place. And you," he said, turning to Alex, "need to think about what family means." The look on Lana's face was a mix of shock and envy, her eyes darting between Alex and Michael. "You're joking. That new house should be ours. This old place, it's beneath us." The revelation left Alex speechless, his earlier bravado evaporating. Lana was visibly upset, her dream of a new house slipping through her fingers. As I embraced Michael, tears of pride and relief mixed together. Despite the challenges he faced, he rose above them, showing a strength and generosity that left me in awe. And again, the bombshell, Michael pulled out another folder, thick with papers. "I did some digging," Michael said, his voice steady, but I could see the anger just beneath the surface. "Lana isn't who she says she is." Lana turned pale and began to look around. Jack and I exchanged worried looks. "What do you mean?" I asked, not sure I wanted to hear the answer. Michael didn't mince words. "She's not a model. She's been, let's just say, her income comes from dating men. Wealthy men." He hesitated, then added, "I found her profile on a site. It's all here." The disgust was immediate, visceral. "Don't show us, please," Jack and I said almost in unison, the idea alone enough to make our skin crawl. When Alex saw the evidence, his world crumbled right there. The woman he married, the life he thought he was building, it was all a lie. In a fit of rage and humiliation, he threw Lana out, vowing to divorce her and sue for whatever he could get for the deception she'd woven around him. Afterward, he turned to us, eyes downcast, a shadow of the confident man who stood in our living room, demanding we upend our lives for him. "I'm sorry," he muttered, the words barely audible. "I was wrong. So wrong." I wanted to forgive him, to sweep everything under the rug and pretend we could go back to the way things were. But the hurt was too deep, the betrayal too raw. "I don't know if I can, Alex," was all I could manage, my voice thick with unshed tears. So, we moved. Michael, Jack, and I settled into the new house, a beautiful space filled with light and the promise of new beginnings. Jack retired soon after, and we started traveling, exploring the world together in a way we'd never been able to before. Alex, on the other hand, was left to piece his life back together in the old house, alone. The once vibrant home now a stark reminder of the cost of his choices. It wasn't easy, stepping into this new chapter of our lives. There were days I'd catch myself staring out the window, wondering where it all went wrong with Alex, how we could mend the bridges he'd burned. But then I'd remember the strength of our family, the love that carried Michael, Jack, and me through the storm.
I'm sitting at our small, cluttered kitchen table, stirring my tea absent-mindedly. It's been a rough day, or maybe it's just the pregnancy hormones making everything feel more intense. My name is Nora. I'm 32, working as a sports manager for a top American football team, and now, expecting. You'd think that'd be enough excitement for one lifetime, but no, there's always family drama to spice things up. Across from me is my husband, Mark. He's the kind of guy who you can always count on. Kind, understanding, and, let's be honest, easy on the eyes too. He's been my rock through everything, especially now, with the baby on the way. Nora, you okay? Mark asks, his brow furrowed with concern. His voice always has a way of sounding like a warm hug. Yeah, just thinking, I reply, trying to smile. Mark reaches across the table, taking my hand in his. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together, okay? I nod, feeling a little better. But the thought of facing his family again makes my stomach twist. They've never been my biggest fans. Mark's mom, Mrs. Thompson, is the type who smiles to your face but whispers behind your back. And then there's his sister, Laura. She's 2 years older than me, married with 2 kids, and she's made it her personal mission to make my life miserable. It started off as small jabs here and there, but ever since we announced the pregnancy, she's been relentless. Just yesterday, at the family dinner, she started again. So, still hanging around those football players all day? Laura asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Mark jumped in before I could respond. Laura, cut it out. You know she's professional. Laura just laughed, a harsh, grating sound. I'm just saying, it's a lot of temptation, isn't it? All those fit, young guys? I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my cool. It's the same every time. She hints, insinuates things about me and my job, about my loyalty to Mark. It's exhausting. Mark's mom, sitting beside Laura, always chimes in with her own subtle digs. Well, we just want what's best for Mark, don't we? I remember looking at Mark, feeling a mix of gratitude and frustration. He's always there, standing up for me, but his family's words still sting. It's like they're waiting for me to slip up, to prove their point. Hey, Nora, Mark says, snapping me back to the present. You know none of what they say is true, right? I trust you, completely. I nod again, squeezing his hand. I know, it's just hard sometimes. Mark's face hardens slightly. I'll talk to them again. This needs to stop. I lean back in my chair, feeling the weight of the situation. Our little family is growing, and I can't help but wonder how this baby will change things. Will it bring us closer together, or drive a deeper wedge between us and his family? The day at work was long and tiring, typical for a Monday. My mind kept drifting to the family drama, making it hard to focus on the reports piling up on my desk. I let out a long sigh as I finally pushed back my chair, ready to head home. As I walked through the parking lot, I noticed my car had a flat tire. Great, just what I needed, I muttered to myself. Nora, Need some help? It was Jake, one of the coaches. He's a giant of a man, always ready to lend a hand. I shook my head. No, I'll just call a tow truck. Thanks, though. Jake raised an eyebrow. That'll take ages. Let me give you a ride. It's no trouble. I hesitated, thinking about Laura's snide remarks. But it was getting late, and I really just wanted to get home. Okay, sure, thanks, Jake. The ride was quiet, mostly. Jake asked about the baby, and I found myself talking about the nursery we were setting up. He dropped me off with a friendly wave, and that was that. Or so I thought. The next day, things took a turn. I was in the kitchen, pouring myself some tea, when Mark walked in, his face like a thundercloud. We need to talk, he said, his voice tight. I felt my stomach drop. What's wrong? He held up his phone, showing me a video. It was me, getting into Jake's car. The angle was creepy, like someone was spying. My sister sent me this, Mark said, his jaw clenched. She's saying stuff about you and Jake. I felt a flash of anger. Are you kidding me? He just gave me a ride because of a flat tire. Mark ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I know, I believe you, but she's stirring things up, telling me to open my eyes and nonsense like that. I slammed my cup down, tea splashing over the rim. This is ridiculous. She's been after me since day one, and now this? Mark came over, putting his arms around me. I know. She's out of line. I'll handle it. I leaned into his embrace, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. Why can't she just leave us alone? Mark sighed. I wish I knew, but I'm on your side, always. I nodded, trying to calm down. Thanks. I hate that she's doing this. We stood there for a moment, in the quiet of our kitchen, united against an unseen enemy. It was comforting, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start of something bigger, something uglier. I pulled back, looking up at Mark. We can't let her get to us. This is our family, our life. She's not going to ruin it. Mark nodded, determination in his eyes. Absolutely, we're in this together. The days following the video incident felt like walking on eggshells. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart skipped a beat, half expecting another twisted message from Laura. It was like living under a microscope, with every move I made potentially being watched and judged. One evening, Mark and I were sitting in the living room, each lost in our own thoughts, when my phone pinged with a message. I glanced at it, and my heart sank. Another text from Laura, no doubt. Anything important? Mark asked, noticing my expression. Just a reminder about the team's meeting tomorrow, I lied, not wanting to stir up more drama. I couldn't tell him that Laura had sent a snarky message about being careful around the players. Mark nodded, but I could tell he was still tense. You know, maybe you should talk to your boss about Laura's behavior. It's getting out of hand. I shook my head. And say what? That my sister-in-law is spreading rumors? That'll sound great. Mark frowned. Well, something needs to be done. This can't go on. I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. I know, but what can we do? It's her word against mine. There was a silence, filled with unspoken worries and frustrations. Then, Mark stood up abruptly. I'm going for a walk, need to clear my head. I watched him go, feeling a mix of guilt and helplessness. This whole situation was putting a strain on us, and I hated it. The next day at work, I tried to focus, but Laura's words echoed in my mind, making it hard to concentrate. During lunch, I sat alone, picking at my food, when my colleague, Lisa, sat down next to me. "Nora, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" Lisa asked, her brow furrowed in concern. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." Lisa leaned in, her voice low. "Is it about that video? I heard rumors." I felt a surge of anger and embarrassment. Who's spreading this nonsense? Lisa shrugged. "I don't know, but it's around. You know how people talk." I put my fork down, my appetite gone. "Great, just what I needed." Lisa put a reassuring hand on mine. "Hey, we know you. Don't let idle gossip get to you." I nodded, but her words did little to ease my mind. The rumors, Laura's relentless jabs, it was all starting to take a toll on me. When I got home that day, Mark was already there, looking serious. "We need to talk about Laura." I hung up my coat, bracing myself. "What now?" Mark hesitated. "I think we should confront her, together. Show her we're united." I sighed, feeling a knot in my stomach. "And then what? She's not going to stop, Mark. This is like a game to her." Mark's jaw tightened. "Well, we can't just let her walk all over us. We have to stand up to her." I nodded, knowing he was right, but dreading the confrontation. Facing Laura meant opening ourselves up to more attacks, more scrutiny. But maybe Mark was right. Maybe standing up to her was the only way to end this. "Okay," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Let's do it. Let's confront her." Mark reached out, taking my hand. "We're in this together, remember?" I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his support. "Together," I echoed, knowing that whatever lay ahead, we'd face it side by side. The day of our son's celebration was a mix of joy and underlying tension. The house was filled with the laughter of friends and the coos of family members over our little bundle of joy. I tried to soak in the happiness, but part of me was on edge, waiting for the inevitable drama to unfold. As guests arrived with gifts and warm wishes, I noticed Laura walking in, a smirk playing on her lips. She held a small, neatly wrapped package, her eyes locked on mine. I felt Mark tense up beside me. "Let's just get through this," I whispered to him, squeezing his hand. He nodded, giving me a reassuring smile. "We've got this." The party went smoothly for a while, everyone cooing over the baby and enjoying the spread of food. Then came the time for opening gifts. My heart pounded as Laura stepped forward, her gift in hand. "Here's something special from me," she said, handing me the package with a flourish. I unwrapped it, my hands shaking slightly. Inside was a certificate for a DNA paternity test from a well-known clinic. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Mark's face turned red with anger. "What the hell, Laura?" Laura shrugged, her smirk widening. "Just a little family joke, if you've got nothing to hide." I felt a surge of anger and humiliation. Standing up, I faced her, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This isn't a joke. It's an insult." The guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between us. Mark stood up, his voice firm. "You need to leave, now." Laura laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the room. "Oh, come on, Nora. Can't you take a joke? I held the certificate up, my decision made. Fine, we'll take your joke. We'll do the test, and then everyone will see how wrong you are. There were murmurs of surprise and approval from some of the guests. Laura's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. Suit yourself, she said, turning on her heel and walking out. The rest of the party passed in a blur. Friends and family tried to be supportive, but the joy of the occasion had been tainted. Later, as Mark and I put the baby to bed, he wrapped his arms around me. I'm sorry, Nora. I never thought she'd go this far. I leaned back against him, feeling drained. It's not your fault, but we'll get through this. Together. Mark kissed the top of my head. Always. The next day, we went to the clinic. The whole process felt surreal, like we were characters in some twisted drama. But we did it, for our family, for our peace of mind. Sitting at the kitchen table with the DNA test results in hand, confirming Mark as the father, a mix of relief and anger coursed through me. Mark, looking over my shoulder, let out a long, heavy sigh. Well, that settles it, he said, his voice tinged with a mix of satisfaction and bitterness. I nodded, folding the paper and setting it aside. It does. But it doesn't change what she did. How she made us feel. Mark sat down beside me, his expression hardening. We can't let her get away with this. She's crossed a line. I looked at him, my mind racing with thoughts. I have an idea. It's a bit, well, it's not exactly nice. Mark raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I took a deep breath. Her birthday is coming up. What if we give her a taste of her own medicine? A DNA test for her family? Mark's eyes widened. Are you serious? Dead serious, I replied, feeling a surge of determination. She needs to understand how it feels. Mark considered it for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, if that's what you think is best. But are you prepared for the fallout? I shrugged. After everything she's done? Yes, I am. The next few weeks passed in a blur of planning and anticipation. Mark was supportive, though I could tell he was worried about how far this might go. But I was resolute. Laura had to learn her lesson. Finally, Laura's birthday arrived. We were at her house, a crowd of family and friends gathered to celebrate. I could feel the weight of the gift in my purse, a small box wrapped in bright paper. As we all gathered around for the gift giving, my heart pounded in my chest. Laura opened gifts from others, laughing and thanking them. Then it was our turn. I handed her the gift. Happy birthday, Laura. She tore open the paper, her smile faltering as she saw what was inside. A DNA test kit, just like the one she had given us. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of shock and anger. What is this? Some kind of joke, Nora? No joke, I said, my voice firm. Just returning the favor. The room fell silent, everyone looking at us. Laura's face turned red, then white. This is sick, she hissed. You're sick. I met her gaze, unflinching. Now you know how it feels. Mark put a hand on my shoulder, a silent show of support. Laura looked around, her expression one of betrayal and humiliation. This isn't over, she spat, before storming off. As we left the party, Mark squeezed my hand. Are you okay? I nodded, feeling a strange mix of triumph and unease. I'm fine. It's just, I never thought I'd be capable of something like this. Mark pulled me into a hug. She pushed us to this. Remember that. The aftermath of Laura's birthday party felt like the calm before a storm. Mark and I were at home, bracing ourselves for what was to come. You think she'll actually do the test? Mark asked, his voice laced with concern. I shrugged, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. I don't know, but I hope she realizes how her actions hurt others. It wasn't long before we got our answer. A few days later, Mark's phone buzzed with a message. He read it, his expression turning grim. Laura did the test, he said, handing me the phone. The message was short and to the point, with a picture of the DNA test results attached. My heart skipped a beat as I looked at the results. They revealed that her husband was not the biological father of her children. Mark and I exchanged a look, a mix of shock and disbelief in our eyes. I didn't expect this, he stammered. I felt a knot in my stomach. Neither did I. The air in our living room was thick with tension, the kind you could cut with a knife. Laura stormed in, her face twisted in fury, with Mrs. Thompson, Mark's mom, in tow. Their unexpected arrival was like a storm breaking the uneasy calm that had settled in our house. What the hell do you think you were doing with that DNA test? Laura spat, her eyes blazing with anger. I stood my ground, feeling a surge of defiance. Exposing the truth, apparently. Something you should have thought about before spreading lies about me. Mrs. Thompson chimed in, her voice sharp. You've gone too far. This family doesn't need your kind of drama. I narrowed my eyes, my patience wearing thin. My kind of drama? Laura's been making my life hell since the day I married Mark. I just gave her a taste of her own medicine. Laura's face turned a shade redder. You're a homewrecker, Nora, that's what you are. Before I could retort, the front door swung open, and in walked Tom, Laura's husband. He looked like a man on the edge, his eyes darting between us. I can't believe you two. And my wife, my kids. His voice broke. I locked eyes with Laura, who was now visibly shaking. You want to tell him, or should I? Laura stammered, but no words came out. I turned to the TV and played the ace up my sleeve, a video from the stadium security. It showed Laura, clear as day, kissing an unknown man in the stands. Tom's face drained of color as he watched. That's my best friend, he whispered, disbelief etched on his face. Laura started to sob, her facade crumbling. Tom, it's not what it looks like. But Tom wasn't listening. He turned to me, his expression a mix of gratitude and pain. Thank you. I needed to see this. I shrugged, feeling a cold satisfaction. Don't thank me, thank Laura for her endless meddling. Mrs. Thompson stood there, speechless, her earlier reproach forgotten. The room was silent except for Laura's crying. Tom turned and walked out, his steps heavy with the weight of betrayal. Laura ran after him, her pleas falling on deaf ears. Mrs. Thompson followed them out in silence. As the door closed behind them, Mark wrapped his arms around me. You okay? I leaned into his embrace, feeling a complex mix of relief and regret. Yeah, it's finally over. The dust had settled in the wake of the scandal, leaving a silence that was both uneasy and reflective. Mark and I sat on our back porch, the evening air cool and comforting. Our son slept peacefully inside, oblivious to the turmoil that had recently engulfed our lives. Mark broke the silence, his voice tinged with a mix of sadness and resolve. I can't believe it's come to this. My sister, Tom's best friend, my family, all torn apart. I looked out into the fading light, feeling a weight in my chest. I know. Sometimes the truth hurts, Mark. It's not pretty, but it's necessary. Your sister's actions, her lies, they were like a poison in our family. Mark nodded slowly. I know. It's just hard to see it all fall apart. I reached out, taking his hand. We can rebuild, Mark. Not the same as before, maybe, but something stronger, something real. He squeezed my hand, a small smile breaking through his troubled expression. With you, I believe we can. We've weathered the storm together. We sat in silence for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. Then Mark spoke up, his voice more determined. We need to start fresh, you, me, our son. We'll set new boundaries with my family. It's time to put our little family first. I nodded, feeling a sense of purpose amidst the chaos. I agree. It's time to move forward on our terms. As we stood up to go inside, Mark paused, looking at me with a newfound appreciation. You know, through all of this, you've been my rock. I can't thank you enough for standing by me. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Always, Mark. We're a team, remember? We walked back into the house, the light spilling out onto the porch, a beacon in the darkness. Inside, our son slept peacefully, a reminder of the love and hope that still remained. I closed my eyes, feeling Mark's steady breathing beside me. Tomorrow was a new day, a new beginning. And we were ready for it.
The whirring of the sewing machine was a familiar lullaby in my life. Here at the Whispering Silk, my atelier, white fabric whispered secrets of upcoming weddings, and lace sighed with anticipation of a lifetime of love. But today, the rhythmic hum did little to soothe the knot forming in my stomach. John, my ever-supportive husband, poked his head through the doorway, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Heard the news from Sarah? I sighed, threading a needle with practiced ease. About Beatrice's fourth rodeo down the aisle? Yeah, Sarah spilled the beans this morning. Beatrice, John's older sister, was a walking contradiction. Dressed head to toe in designer labels, she exuded an air of entitlement that could curdle milk. Her marriages, however, were a different story, 3 quick trips down the aisle and even faster exits, leaving a trail of bewildered ex-husbands in their wake. John chuckled. Brace yourself, Ames. Knowing B, that woman wouldn't know the meaning of reasonable if it bit her designer purse. I snorted. You're telling me. Remember the meltdown she had over the shade of taupe for her bridesmaid dresses? It was like the apocalypse was upon us. The memory still made me roll my eyes. Beatrice had a knack for turning even the most mundane detail into a 5-alarm fire. Just then, the doorbell chimed, its shrill ring shattering the peaceful hum of the workshop. John raised an eyebrow. Early for an evening fitting, isn't it? I exchanged a look with him, a silent premonition hanging heavy in the air. Let's just say, I muttered, heading towards the door. I wouldn't be surprised if a certain someone decided to grace us with her presence a little early. Swinging the door open, I was greeted by the sight of Beatrice, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against a Louis Vuitton clutch. Her lips were pursed in a disapproving line, a stark contrast to the bright, eager faces of the brides-to-be who usually graced my doorstep. Amelia, she drawled, her voice dripping with condescension. Lovely to see you. I trust you've cleared your schedule for the next few months. I forced a smile, my teeth gritting together. Actually, Beatrice, I have quite a few brides already booked in. Yes, darlings in their first weddings, she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. But this, my dear, is my fourth. A milestone occasion. Surely you wouldn't deny your own sister the privilege of having you design her dress? Sister-in-law might be a generous term for Beatrice. We tolerated each other at best, and the thought of spending months working on her wedding dress filled me with dread. Of course, Beatrice, I gritted out, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. But designing a wedding dress is a meticulous process, it takes time and… Beatrice cut me off with a haughty sniff. Time is money, darling, and I'm more than willing to pay for your expertise. Her voice dripped with sarcasm, the implication clear. She considered my talent a mere service, not an art form. Actually, Beatrice, I began, a steely resolve forming in my chest. My usual fee for a wedding dress of this caliber is $5,000. Absolutely outrageous, she sputtered, clutching her pearls in mock horror. For a simple dress for a fourth wedding? Come on, Amelia, be reasonable. Beatrice, I said, my voice firm. The intricacy of the design, the quality of the fabric, these all factor into the price. She scoffed. Intricacy? Honey, I'm thinking simple elegance. Maybe a touch of lace, some pearls, a white fabric, nothing too over the top, you know, considering it's not exactly my first rodeo. My jaw clenched. White for a fourth wedding isn't exactly simple elegance, Beatrice. Perhaps a more understated color would be more appropriate? A dangerous glint flickered in her eyes. Don't even think about suggesting that dusty rose monstrosity you foisted on Sarah. White is the color of purity, Amelia, and purity is exactly what I'm aiming for. Purity? The woman had 3 ex-husbands and a trail of broken hearts a mile long. Purity was the last word I'd associate with Beatrice. Look, Beatrice, I sighed, trying a different approach. How about we take a look at some sketches, discuss some fabrics, and then we can talk about the price. The next hour was a masterclass in frustration. Beatrice shot down every design suggestion, wrinkled her nose at every fabric swatch, and insisted on adding more and more bling to every iteration. More crystals here, she'd say, tapping a sketch with a perfectly manicured nail. And a longer train, don't you think? A girl can never have too much train on her wedding day. I gritted my teeth, reminding myself that Beatrice's outrageous demands wouldn't pay the bills if I didn't somehow placate her. Finally, after an eternity of back and forth, we settled on a design, a white, strapless gown with a voluminous skirt and enough crystals to blind a small country. And the price for this masterpiece? Beatrice drawled, leaning back in a plush armchair. Taking into account the complexity of the design and the… I hesitated, searching for a polite way to phrase it. Extravagant amount of embellishments, the total comes to $3,000. Beatrice's eyes widened. 3,000? Are you serious, Amelia? That's highway robbery. It's a fair price, I countered, my voice firm. My team and I will be putting in countless hours to create this dress. Look, she said, her voice softening into a feigned sweetness. How about a little family discount? Sisters-in-law should look out for each other, shouldn't they? I stared at her, incredulous. A family discount after all the insults and demands? The audacity of the woman. Beatrice, I said, taking a deep breath, consider this my final offer, $3,000. Not a penny less. In the end, she agreed, but as if she had done me a favor. A few weeks passed, and at the next fitting she made a shocking statement. Considering this is a family affair, she began, her voice dripping with condescension. And all, I was thinking maybe we could skip the whole money exchange thing? My jaw dropped. Skip the money exchange? Beatrice, this dress took weeks to create. My team and I put in countless hours. Look, sweetie, she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. Think of it as a wedding gift from your dear sister-in-law. A way to show you support my 4th trip down the aisle. My blood pressure skyrocketed. $3,000 was a significant chunk of change, not to mention the countless hours of labor. A free dress? As a wedding gift? The audacity of the woman. Beatrice, I said, my voice tight with anger, I already cut you a 30% discount. My team deserves to be paid for their work. She scoffed. Oh, come on, Amelia. Don't be so petty. It's just a dress. Besides, think of the exposure. Having me, Beatrice Kensington, wearing your creation at my wedding? Priceless publicity, darling. Priceless publicity? This woman truly lived in a world of her own delusions. There was no way I was letting her walk all over me, and my business. Beatrice, I said, my voice firm, my final offer is $3,000. Not a penny less. Her smile evaporated, replaced by a thunderous frown. Fine, she spat, her voice laced with venom. But don't think this is over, Amelia. You'll regret crossing me. With that, she stormed out of the atelier, leaving me speechless and fuming. That evening, I recounted the whole ordeal to John, expecting him to be on my side. To my relief, he was. The woman's delusional, he said, shaking his head. $3,000 is more than fair. You don't owe her a single stitch for free. Just as I started to relax, the phone rang. It was Beatrice's mother, my mother-in-law. My stomach lurched. Dealing with one Beatrice was enough, the thought of placating both of them filled me with dread. Amelia, my mother-in-law began, her voice laced with concern. I heard about the disagreement with Beatrice. Please, can't you just make the dress for her? As a wedding gift from our family? My heart sank. A part of me wanted to refuse, to stand my ground. But another part, the more sentimental part, couldn't bear to disappoint my kind mother-in-law. All right, I sighed, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. But consider it a gift from John and me, not a freebie. My mother-in-law let out a sigh of relief. Thank you, Amelia, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Beatrice has a way with words, but I know she appreciates your talent. This dress will mean a lot to her. I wasn't so sure about that, but I held my tongue. The last thing I needed was another fight, especially with my mother-in-law. The dress was coming together beautifully, a masterpiece of white lace and delicate hand-sewn details. Every stitch held a silent testament to the countless hours I and my team had poured into creating Beatrice's dream wedding gown. Yet, the joy of creation was overshadowed by the constant tension of her upcoming visit. A week before the wedding, Sarah, one of my closest friends and Beatrice's acquaintance, called. We chatted about the upcoming wedding, the excitement bubbling in her voice. Can you believe it's almost here? She gushed. I even took a peek at the guest list the other day. Guest list? My stomach lurched, a flicker of unease sparking within me. Guest list? I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Beatrice hadn't explicitly mentioned a guest list, but I assumed I would be included as a family member. Yeah, Sarah said, oblivious to my sudden apprehension. It's quite a crowd, all the A-listers and socialites Beatrice has been bragging about. A cold dread crept into my limbs. And everyone's invited? I asked, my voice strained. Everyone who matters, of course, Sarah replied casually. Then, sensing a shift in my tone, she added, Why, Amelia? Is something wrong? Unable to hold back the rising panic, I blurted out, Am I on the list, Sarah? Silence stretched on the other end of the phone. Amelia, I don't see your name. The blood drained from my face. You don't see my name? I repeated, the words hollow and disbelieving. A wave of sympathy washed over Sarah's voice. Hold on, let me double-check. There was a rustling of paper, followed by another heavy silence. No, Amelia, she finally admitted, a hint of sorrow in her tone. Your name definitely isn't there. Shock morphed into anger. Beatrice, after all the work, the endless revisions, and the exorbitant cost, had the audacity to exclude me from her wedding? My hands clenched into fists. I hung up, my mind reeling. John entered the room just then, his brow furrowed with concern. What's wrong, Ames? You look like you've seen a ghost. I recounted the entire conversation with Sarah, my voice trembling with a mix of hurt and anger. John's face mirrored my own outrage. "That's unbelievable," he exclaimed. "After everything you've done for her?" We immediately called Beatrice. When she answered, her voice was chirpy and cheerful. "Amelia, darling, how's my dress coming along?" John snatched the phone from my hand. "Don't you darling us, Beatrice," he said, his voice cold and hard. "We know you didn't invite Amelia to the wedding." A surprised gasp escaped Beatrice. "Oh, honey," she cooed, feigning innocence. "Is that what this is about? Surely, you understand, it's a very exclusive affair. Just the cream of society, you know?" After these words, she hung up the phone. John and I exchanged heated glances as the phone call ended. The air crackled with indignation. Beatrice's audacity had pushed me over the edge. No way was I letting her walk all over me, not after all the blood, sweat, and tears poured into her precious wedding dress. A mischievous glint ignited in my eyes. Revenge, a delicious word, danced on my tongue. Beatrice wanted exclusivity? I'd give her exclusive, a wedding day surprise she wouldn't forget. The final fitting arrived, and Beatrice sashayed in, a whirlwind of fake smiles and designer sunglasses. This time, however, her usual demands were replaced by a nervous impatience. The wedding was 2 days away, and the pressure was clearly getting to her. "All right, darling," she cooed, inspecting the dress with a practiced eye. "Let's get this over with. I haven't got all day." The final fitting unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play. Beatrice, bless her oblivious heart, preened and fussed, demanding the most insignificant alterations. This time, though, I played the part of the patient seamstress to perfection, all the while suppressing a smile that threatened to erupt onto my face. "There's just one minor detail left," I lied smoothly, once she'd finally exhausted her list of imaginary flaws. "A small embellishment on the back that requires some delicate handwork. I'll finish it in 2 days." Beatrice, ever impatient, bristled at the delay. 2 days? Seriously, Amelia? Can't you just do it now? "It's a very intricate piece, darling," I countered, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Trust me, it's best left untouched until the last minute. Besides, wouldn't you want your dress to look absolutely flawless when you walk down the aisle?" Her vanity outweighed her suspicion. All right, she grumbled, finally relenting. "Just make sure you get there early on the wedding day. I wouldn't want any last-minute hiccups." With a triumphant wave of her manicured hand, she sashayed out the door, leaving me alone with a mischievous grin plastered on my face. The air crackled with the thrill of rebellion. No way was I handing her the real dress after her little guest list stunt. The moment the door closed, I sprang into action. In the back room, a box, my secret weapon, awaited. I'd procured it earlier, its sturdy cardboard a blank canvas for my revenge masterpiece. But first, I needed a little something extra. Rummaging through my fabric scraps, I found a leftover piece, the cheapest, most uninspired polyester I could find, in a shade vaguely similar to Beatrice's ivory lace. With swift precision, I folded the fabric, creating a loose, flowing silhouette that mimicked the shape of the dress. It wouldn't be an exact replica, but that was part of the fun. This dress would be a caricature of Beatrice's inflated ego, a symbol of her shallowness and lack of respect. The wedding day arrived, a crisp spring morning buzzing with nervous anticipation. John and I parked discreetly across the street from Beatrice's house, a hive of frantic activity. Through the window, I could see her flitting around like a hyperactive hummingbird, barking orders at a team of flustered bridesmaids and stylists. Taking a deep breath, I hoisted the now christened surprise box onto my shoulder. It felt surprisingly light, a stark contrast to the emotional weight it carried. John squeezed my hand, a silent reassurance in his warm touch. We marched up the front steps and were greeted by a flustered maid of honor. "Amelia? John? What are you two doing here so early?" "Beatrice requested I bring the dress at the venue," I explained, keeping my voice even. The maid of honor scurried off to relay the message, leaving me and John alone in the foyer. The air crackled with nervous energy, punctuated by the distant shouts of Beatrice barking orders. A moment later, Beatrice herself appeared, a whirlwind of tulle and barely concealed panic. "Amelia, there you are. Thank goodness. Where's the dress?" "Right here," I said, hefting the box towards her. Beatrice, oblivious to the impending chaos, barked another order at a passing bridesmaid, and then she turned to us. "John, you can stay. And you, Amelia, get out of the house, the dressmaker doesn't belong here." We did not argue or make scandals, just exited the house, the weight of the cardboard box replaced by a lightness in my chest. We returned to our car, the sounds of the bustling household fading behind us. John started the engine, a playful glint in his eyes. "So, what now?" he asked. "Now," I said, a mischievous glint mirroring his. "We wait for the fireworks." Little did we know, the fireworks had already begun. As we drove away, news of Beatrice's outrageous treatment of me spread through the house like wildfire. Her brother, already fuming over her exclusion of me from the guest list, was livid. His wife, Sarah, a close friend of mine, added fuel to the fire, recounting the details of Beatrice's arrogance. The result? A full-blown family brawl. John's brother and his wife stormed out, refusing to attend the wedding in protest. The news, of course, reached Beatrice amidst the chaos of getting ready. But in her self-absorbed world, the only thing that mattered was the dress. The doorbell's shrill ring sliced through the quiet comfort of our home, shattering the peaceful aftermath. John and I exchanged a surprised glance, a silent question hanging in the air. An hour had barely passed since we returned from Beatrice's chaotic house. What fresh drama could this be? With a deep breath, I opened the door, bracing myself for the unknown. My heart plummeted the moment I saw them, a fuming Beatrice, her usually perfectly coiffed hair askew, her mother, a picture of weary resignation, and a bewildered-looking fiancé flanking them. Beatrice, eyes blazing with fury, thrust the surprise box at me, the cardboard now crumpled and ripped. Inside, the cheap fabric lay exposed, a pathetic substitute for the dress she'd expected. "What the heck is this?" she shrieked, her voice laced with barely contained rage. "That, my dear Beatrice," I replied, my voice calm but firm, "is exactly what you deserve." Her mother, clearly mortified by the scene unfolding, stepped forward. "Beatrice, calm down. What's going on here?" Beatrice ignored her mother, her attention solely on me. "You ruined everything. You sabotaged my wedding." "Hold on a second," I interjected, raising a hand. "Let's get something straight. You excluded me from your guest list, treated me like a glorified servant, and expected me to hand over a $3,000 dress for free. This little surprise," I tapped the crumpled box, "is just a taste of your own medicine." Her face turned scarlet, a strangled gasp escaping her lips. She lunged towards me, fists clenched, but her mother grabbed her arm, holding her back. "Don't even think about it, Beatrice," her mother hissed, her voice laced with disappointment. Beatrice, however, couldn't contain her fury. She whirled on her mother, yelling accusations. "You're all in on this. Ruining my wedding day." The fiancé, witnessing this display of temper, looked as if he'd swallowed a lemon. "Is this what I can expect after we get married?" he said, his voice tight. Beatrice's tirade abruptly stopped. She stared at him, a flicker of dawning realization crossing her features. The fiancé, clearly disgusted by the entire scene, sighed heavily. "This wedding is off," he declared, his voice flat. Beatrice's face contorted in a mixture of shock and disbelief. "No, you can't cancel. We can work this out." He shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "I deserve better than this drama. Goodbye, Beatrice." With that, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Beatrice speechless, her dream wedding crumbling around her. A stunned silence descended upon the porch. Beatrice's mother, shaking her head in disappointment, offered a weak apology before following the fiancé's path. Beatrice stood there, alone and defeated, the weight of her actions finally settling upon her. Without another word, she turned and trudged down the street, the wedding dress, or rather, the sad excuse for it, still clutched in her hand. John and I watched the scene unfold, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. Beatrice had gotten a harsh lesson in humility, and hopefully, it would be one she wouldn't soon forget. In my voice. Sometimes, a little cardboard box is all it takes to set things straight. As the last rays of the setting sun painted the sky in fiery hues, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah, her voice laced with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "Amelia, you won't believe the latest," she exclaimed. Beatrice went full meltdown on the wedding organizers. John and I exchanged a surprised glance. The drama, it seemed, wasn't over yet. "Meltdown?" I echoed, bracing myself for another story of Beatrice's self-absorption. "Apparently," Sarah continued, "she refused to pay them a dime since the wedding didn't happen. Caused a huge scene, yelling and screaming. The poor organizers had to call the cops." My jaw dropped. Beatrice, in her blind rage, had managed to turn a personal disaster into a public spectacle. The image of her arguing with the police was almost comical, if not a little sad. "Did they arrest her?" I asked, a morbid curiosity flickering within me. "Not exactly," Sarah chuckled. "But they issued her a hefty fine for disorderly conduct. Apparently, she wasn't too happy about spending her wedding night at the police station." John let out a snort of laughter. "Serves her right," he muttered. The following days were a whirlwind of gossip and aftershocks. I reached out to Beatrice's fiancé, offering a sincere apology for the way things had ended. To my surprise, he was gracious. "Honestly, Amelia," he said, his voice warm, "I owe you a debt of gratitude. Seeing Beatrice's true colors saved me from a lifetime of misery." Beatrice's mother also contacted me. After explaining the situation in detail, I saw a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. The ordeal had clearly taken its toll on her, and a heavy silence hung between us before she spoke. "I apologize for Beatrice's behavior, Amelia," she said, her voice strained. "I should have done more to rein her in." "It's not your fault," I replied gently. As for Beatrice herself, she became a social pariah. Humiliated and ostracized, she packed her bags and left the city, unable to bear the weight of her own actions. John and I, on the other hand, reveled in the newfound peace. The experience had brought us closer, a shared victory against arrogance and entitlement. Life sure has a twisted sense of humor. Here I am, Anna, just a regular gal who somehow ended up in the middle of a family drama that could give soap operas a run for their money. Let me set the scene for you. It's a sunny Tuesday afternoon, and I'm in the kitchen, trying to figure out if the pasta sauce needs more basil or if I'm just procrastinating to avoid going back to the living room where David, my husband, is having a chat with his sister, Sarah. David and I have been married for a bit now. He's a great guy, really, but his first marriage was a bust. No kids, just a lot of arguments, I guess. Then there's me, with my 10-year-old whirlwind, Alex, from a chapter of my life I don't talk much about. David's family, though, they're a whole other story. Especially Sarah. She's like one of those characters from a TV show that you love to hate. Always smiling and sweet-talking when David's around, but turns into a venom-spitting serpent the second his back is turned. I decided the sauce was fine and braced myself to face the music. Walking into the living room, I caught the tail end of what Sarah was saying. "And honestly, David, it's so generous of you to take Alex in like your own. Not many men would do that," Sarah cooed, her voice dripping with something sickly sweet. David, bless his heart, didn't pick up on the sarcasm. "Well, Sarah, Alex is a great kid. And Anna, she's been amazing. We're a family." I forced a smile, stepping into the room. "Speaking of family, how about we all sit down for dinner? It's almost ready." Sarah turned her syrupy smile to me. "Oh, Anna, that sounds lovely. I was just telling David how lucky he is to have you." "Yeah, luckiest man alive," I muttered under my breath as I turned back to the kitchen. As the evening wore on, dinner went as expected. Sarah praised my cooking, made a couple of not-so-subtle digs at how I've managed to settle in with David, and even threw in a couple of backhanded compliments for good measure. It wasn't until we were clearing the table that Sarah decided to show her true colors. David had excused himself to take a work call, and Alex was upstairs, doing whatever 10-year-olds do these days. It was just Sarah and me, a moment she clearly had been waiting for. "You know, Anna, it's funny," she started, leaning against the kitchen counter, a smirk playing on her lips. "How you've managed to land a man like David. From a nobody to the lady of the house. Quite the upgrade, don't you think?" I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. "Sarah, I'm not sure what you're getting at." "Oh, come on, Anna. We both know this is all just a big show for you. Playing the doting wife and mother. But we both know what this really is, don't we? A nice, comfortable setup." Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. "You know what, Sarah? I don't have time for this. If you've got something to say it to David." She laughed, a cold, harsh sound that filled the kitchen. "Oh, I wouldn't want to burst your little bubble, Anna. Enjoy it while it lasts. But remember, I'm watching you. And sooner or later, everyone will see the truth." Who knew transitioning to a housewife would feel like stepping into a minefield, especially with Sarah lurking around every corner, eager to see me trip. David brought up the idea one evening, his tone hesitant, as if he was walking on eggshells. "Anna, I've been thinking," he started, fiddling with his fork, not meeting my eyes. "With the business taking off, I need more help. And I was wondering, maybe you could, step in?" I looked up from my plate, surprised. "You mean, leave my job? Work with you?" "Yeah." David finally looked up, his eyes hopeful. "It's just, I trust you, Anna. And it could be good for us, for the family. What do you think?" It wasn't an easy decision. I loved my job, the independence it gave me. But David was right. The family needed me, and deep down, I knew this was the right move. "Okay," I sighed. "Let's do it. For the family." It was another ordinary day, or so I thought, cleaning up after breakfast and planning my to-do list, when Sarah dropped by unannounced. Her visits were about as pleasant as a toothache, but today, she was on a whole other level. "I can't believe you quit your job to play house," Sarah sneered the moment David was out of earshot. "What's your angle, Anna? Gold digger much?" I spun around, my blood boiling. "Excuse me? I'm doing this for my family, Sarah, not that it's any of your business." "Oh, please," she scoffed, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "You've got David wrapped around your finger. It's pathetic." Before I could unleash a comeback, David walked back in. "What's going on here?" he asked, eyeing us both. "Your wife was just explaining how she's turned into the perfect little housewife," Sarah said, her voice dripping with venom. David's gaze flicked to me, confusion written all over his face, then back to Sarah. "I don't like your tone, Sarah. What's your problem?" Sarah huffed, puffing up like a blowfish. "My problem? Your wife's a gold digger, David. She quits her job, and now she's living off you. Everyone sees it." That's when David lost it. His usual calm demeanor evaporated, and he turned to Sarah with a fire in his eyes I'd rarely seen. "My office. Now," he barked, pointing towards the hallway. Sarah's mouth snapped shut, and she stomped off after David, shooting me a glare that could curdle milk. I was left standing in the kitchen, my heart racing, wondering what the heck was going to happen next. The shouting from David's office was muffled, but the intensity was crystal clear. Words like respect, family, and apology were thrown around, though who said what was anyone's guess. Then, all of a sudden, it went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that screams, "Something big just went down." My heart was in my throat as I waited, dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Moments later, the office door flew open, and outstormed Sarah, her face the color of a ripe tomato, eyes blazing with fury. She didn't even glance my way as she barreled past me and out the front door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled. David appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight. He sighed deeply and met my gaze. "I'm sorry you had to hear that, Anna. But I've had enough of her disrespect towards you, towards us." I walked over to him, my earlier anger melting away. "Are you okay?" He wrapped me in a tight hug. "I will be. We will be. I had to make it clear to her that she can't treat you, or any of us, like that." After that showdown, Sarah became a ghost in our lives. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no sign of her. It was like she'd vanished off the face of the earth, at least as far as our family was concerned. Adjusting to life as a housewife wasn't a walk in the park, but I managed to get the hang of it pretty quickly. Our house, once just a place to crash after a long day's work, turned into a well-oiled machine under my care. I also dipped my toes into David's world of financial investments. Turns out, I had a knack for it, probably more than I had initially thought. Between balancing the books and running the household, life was full, busy, and in a strange way, satisfying. David and I even started talking about taking a belated honeymoon. With all the hustle of his work, we never really got the chance to do something just for us after we got married. "We should go somewhere, just the two of us." "Anywhere you want," he'd say, wrapping his arms around me after dinner, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Yeah?" I'd respond, leaning back into his embrace. "And leave all this?" I'd gesture around to our home, the life we'd built. "Who's gonna keep you from burning the house down trying to make toast?" He'd chuckle, a deep, warm sound. "Guess we'll have to take the risk. I'll learn to make toast if it means getting you alone for a week." It wasn't just us, though. David was a rock star with Alex. He'd taken to teaching him baseball, showing him the ropes, the right way to swing, the techniques that'd make a difference. I'd watch them from the kitchen window, tossing the ball back and forth, laughing and cheering. It was everything I'd hoped for when I dreamed of having a family. Then, just as we started to really settle into this idyll, life threw us a curveball. David, with all his vitality and plans for the future, was suddenly gone. "Heart problems," they said. It was unexpected, a bolt from the blue that left us reeling. One day we're planning a honeymoon, and the next, I'm trying to figure out how to tell our son that his dad isn't coming home. The world didn't stop, though it felt like it should have. Life went on, painfully, inexorably. The big house felt emptier, the financial statement sat untouched on David's desk, and the baseball glove collected dust in the corner. In the silence that followed, I found myself talking to David as if he could hear me. "You left us too soon," I'd whisper, clutching his pillow close, trying to catch the scent of him that was already fading. "You promised me a honeymoon, you know. And toast, you promised toast." The day of David's funeral was a blur of sorrow and formalities. I was barely holding it together, grief gripping me so tight I found it hard to breathe. Through it all, Sarah was oddly detached, her mind clearly on matters other than mourning. She hadn't lifted a finger to help with any of the arrangements, leaving me to juggle everything on top of my own heartache. As the service commenced, the chapel was filled with those who knew David, distant relatives, colleagues, friends. They spoke highly of him, each anecdote and memory painting a picture of the man we all missed dearly. The respect and love they had for David was palpable, offering a sliver of comfort in the midst of pain. Then, as the eulogies wound down, Sarah made her move. It was like she couldn't stand the idea of not being the center of attention, even in grief. She pushed her way to the front, her eyes cold and calculating as she addressed the gathered crowd. "I need to make something clear," she began, her voice cutting through the solemn air. "Anna here, she's not one of us. She's always been about the money, playing the doting wife, but we all know the truth." Murmurs rippled through the room as Sarah's accusations flew. "She's nothing but a gold digger. Never loved my brother, only loved what he could give her. And let me tell you, she made my life hell, kept me away from my own brother, all to secure her spot as the sole heir. The audacity of her lies stole my breath. I stood there, frozen, as she painted me as the villain in her twisted narrative. And I'll fight for what's rightfully mine, she declared with a venomous glare. David's inheritance belongs to his real family, not some outsider and her unknown child. The room erupted into chaos, sides being taken, whispers growing louder. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a surprising number of faces turned to me with looks of sympathy and support. They knew David, and they knew us. They knew the truth. I was shell-shocked, the pain of Sarah's betrayal slicing through the fog of grief. It was one thing to deal with her underhanded comments and disdain in private, but to stand there, on the day we were supposed to say our final goodbyes to David, and listen to her spew such venom was unbearable. In that moment, I realized the depth of her malice. It wasn't just about not liking me or disapproving of our marriage. Sarah was willing to tear down everything David and I had built together, all for the sake of money and spite. The aftermath of David's funeral was a raw, gaping wound, made worse by Sarah's venom. I had tried to maintain a facade of strength for Alex's sake, but Sarah's relentless pursuit of what she deemed her rightful inheritance was a constant test of my resilience. Days trickled by, each one a challenge in keeping my composure and shielding Alex from the worst of it. Then, one afternoon, as Alex and I were sifting through a box of David's belongings, a mix of tears and laughter gracing our memories, Sarah stormed into our home like a tempest, her eyes wild with fury. "Explain this to me, Anna," she demanded, slamming a copy of the will onto the kitchen table where we sat. "Why does everything go to your son, while I, David's blood, get scraps?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the onslaught. David made his wishes clear, Sarah. He wanted to make sure Alex and I were taken care of. "Bullshit," she spat, her face contorted in anger. "That kid isn't even his, not legally. David never adopted him. I'll drag this through every court until I get what's mine." Alex, eyes wide with confusion and fear, looked from Sarah to me, seeking reassurance. I squeezed his shoulder, a silent promise of protection. "Sarah," I began, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. "You're wrong. David didn't need to adopt Alex, because Alex is his biological son." Her tirade halted abruptly, words caught in her throat. "What?" The single word was a choked whisper, disbelief etching her features. "Yes," I continued, feeling a surge of defiant strength. "David is Alex's father. We never told anyone because we wanted to protect Alex from exactly this kind of ugliness." "Lies." Sarah's voice cracked, but the certainty behind her accusation wavered. "You're lying. Prove it." Without a word, I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. I retrieved the folder containing the birth certificate with David's name proudly listed as the father. I tossed them onto the table in front of her. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the documents, her eyes darting between the lines of irrefutable evidence. A myriad of emotions played across her face, shock, denial, and finally, a dawning realization of the truth. This can't be," she murmured, the fight draining from her as the reality of her brother's life, a life she thought she knew, crumbled around her. "It is," I said, firm but not unkind. "David loved Alex. He loved us. And his last wish was to see us taken care of. Can't you respect that?" Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting mine for the first time without malice. There was a vulnerability there I hadn't seen before. I need to think." Without another word, she stood, the documents clutched in her hand, and walked out, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. Alex, still clinging to my side, looked up at me with wide, questioning eyes. "Is she going to come back?" he asked, his voice small. "I don't know, sweetheart," I replied, pulling him into a hug. "But no matter what, we're going to be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters most." In the weeks following the confrontation, Sarah's determination to undermine my son's rightful inheritance only intensified. Her actions culminated in a legal battle that threatened to tear apart what little peace we had managed to find in our grief. She was adamant, claiming that I had somehow deceived David into believing Alex was his biological son, thus securing our financial future at her expense. Her allegations, steeped in bitterness, prompted a legal requirement for incontrovertible proof of paternity. The decision to proceed with a DNA test was not taken lightly. It felt like a violation, a final indignity that David's memory did not deserve. Yet, it was a necessary step to protect Alex's future and affirm his rightful place as David's son. The process was clinical, impersonal, but underpinning it all was a simmering tension, a silent battle between truth and resentment. On the day the results were due, Sarah and I found ourselves seated across from each other in the sterile environment of the lawyer's office, a gulf of unspoken recriminations between us. "You're sure you want to do this?" I asked, breaking the silence. My voice was steady, but inside, a storm of emotions raged. Sarah's response was a terse nod, her lips a thin line. "Let's just get this over with," she said, her voice laced with a defiance that belied her nervousness. The lawyer, a neutral party in this familial discord, opened the envelope with a solemnity that matched the gravity of the situation. He scanned the document, then looked up, meeting my gaze first, then Sarah's. "The results are conclusive," he began, his tone measured. "The DNA analysis confirms with a high degree of certainty that Alex is indeed David's biological son. This makes him the rightful heir to David's estate, in accordance with the will." The words hung in the air, a definitive end to Sarah's campaign of doubt. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a vindication for David, for Alex, and for the truth we had always known. Sarah, for her part, sat frozen, the color draining from her face as the implications of the results sank in. The fight, the anger, the relentless pursuit of what she believed was hers by right, all of it crumbled in the face of undeniable truth. I didn't," she stammered, her facade of certainty shattering. "You see, Sarah, Alex was always David's priority. He loved him as his own, because he was his own. This battle, this pain you put us through, it was never necessary." Sarah looked away, her eyes brimming with tears that refused to fall. The lawyer, sensing the emotional turmoil, tactfully suggested we might need a moment. As the office door clicked shut behind him, leaving us in an uneasy truce, I reached across the chasm of our shared grief. "Sarah, it's time to put this behind us. For David's sake, for Alex's. We can't change the past, but we can decide where we go from here." But she refused to put up with it. "You're going to regret this," she screamed and ran out of the office, slamming the door loudly at the last. Time marched on, relentless and indifferent to the void David's passing left in our lives. Alex and I, we did our best to keep his memory alive, to honor him in our daily routines. Then, through the grapevine, snippets of Sarah's current predicament began to reach me. The whispers painted a grim picture. Sarah, it seemed, had found herself in a financial quagmire. She'd always had a taste for the finer things, a lifestyle that her means couldn't quite support. David's death and the subsequent inheritance saga seemed to have pushed her over the edge into a reckless spree of loans and lavish spending. She really thought she'd get everything, huh? My neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, mentioned offhand one afternoon as we chatted over the fence. "Now, I hear she's dodging calls left and right, creditors breathing down her neck." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Yeah, seems like it. Hard to believe she thought luxury bags were worth all this mess." Mrs. Thompson clicked her tongue in disapproval. "Pride and greed, dear. They make people do foolish things. Shame, really. Your David, God rest his soul, was never one for such nonsense." The news of Sarah's financial woes stirred a complicated mix of emotions in me. There was no pleasure in her misfortune, no sense of vindication. If anything, it was a tragic reminder of how deeply fractured our family had become in the wake of David's death. Months had rolled by since the whole inheritance drama settled down. Just when I thought peace had finally found its way back to us, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Sarah. Hearing from her after everything that went down was the last thing I expected. Curiosity, more than anything, made me answer. Anna, listen, I need your help. Sarah's voice came through, tinged with desperation I hadn't heard from her before. I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. Help? Now that's rich, coming from you. Weren't you the one who said I wasn't family? What changed? She hesitated, then plowed ahead with her request. That was before. This is now. I'm in deep, Anna. I need to pay off these debts. We're family, aren't we? The audacity of her request floored me. Family? You've got a short memory, Sarah. When it suited you, I was nothing. And now, in your hour of need, we're suddenly relatives? It's not like that. She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't having any of it. No, it's exactly like that. You haven't changed a bit, Sarah. Still as self-centered as ever. You didn't think twice before dragging me and Alex through mud, and now you want help? There was a pause, a silence that spoke volumes. I could almost hear her scrambling for a comeback, any semblance of an argument that could sway me. I just thought. You thought wrong. I cut her off, my voice firm. You made your bed, Sarah. Now, you gotta lie in it. I've got my own family to look after, and frankly, you're not part of it. Not after everything. The line went quiet, and for a moment, I wondered if she had anything left to say. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, resigned. I see. I'm sorry, Anna. For everything. Sorry doesn't cut it, Sarah. Actions speak louder than words, and you're screamed. You'll figure your way out of this mess. Goodbye. Hanging up, I let out a long breath I didn't realize I was holding. It felt like closing the final chapter of a book filled with too much turmoil. Looking over at Alex, who was doing his homework at the kitchen table, I was reminded of what truly mattered. Who was that, Mom? Alex asked, his pencil pausing mid-sentence. Just someone from the past, honey. It's nothing to worry about, I assured him, offering a smile. He nodded, turning his attention back to his homework, and I watched him for a moment. This was my world now, my priority. The drama, the fights, the endless cycle of resentment with Sarah, it was all behind us.